Hi, Lance. I see that you're on. Thank you for showing up a little early.
Hi, Tina. I just wanted to say hi. I don't know that I've ever met you formally. So it's Sadie with foster care licensing.
Hi, Sadie. Yeah, you're just a name in my email right now.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
good to
So
see you. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Hi,
great. I'm
Sadie.
so glad you're here.
Hi. Yeah, I hopped on a little late this morning. I had a few doctor's appointments, so I apologize for that.
Well,
And
perfect. I'm
Sadie,
glad.
Tina who will be teaching your class in December,
Oh,
the
cool.
Smart Sitter class. So you'll have a
Yep.
chance to hang out with her that morning and afternoon.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw your name come up on that and I was like, well, that's cool. We're gonna have lots of great instructors. So really
Yeah.
excited about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things we do. So near to my heart.
I was planning on bringing my son with. Is that fine? I suppose I need to register him.
Yeah,
I'll
go
do
ahead and
that.
register him, or just email me his name and your phone number, and if he has any food allergies, that way
Okay.
his fee will be waived. Otherwise, the system will stop you before
Oh, are
the
you?
fee part.
I mean, I'll pay it, whatever.
No,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay. I'll shoot you an email then. Thank you.
Yeah, my kiddo will be there too.
How old?
He's 12.
Okay, mine just turned 13 in October, so it's perfect time for him to take this anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so excited to see this on here.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
This
and
was
go ahead.
this was one of the things that we were kind of looking for some direction for. So awesome.
Yeah, so I'm gonna in just a moment turn it over to Lance. Deputy Lance Duncan is here with us today, and he's gonna cover this topic with drug paraphernalia and gun safety, which is super exciting for us to be able to offer. And then a little later on, I know Lance is really talking about a lot of illicit drugs and that sort of thing. We are going to highlight a little bit later on with our poisonings and medication area. Edibles and medical marijuana. So we are going to be covering that as well.
Perfect.
But I am really, really excited to turn it over to Lance. He's been with the Sheriff's Department. Remind me, Lance, how many years?
I've been with the Grand Forks County Sheriff's Office for coming on 5, about 4.5 and some change now.
And I mean, he's not only a deputy that has been very generous with his time with us. I hear he's also a talented musician. So just all around really cool guy. So I'm really excited to turn it over to Lance.
And Lance, before you start, can I just make one comment? Sadie, you were talking about being glad to see this on the agenda. I will say when we first started doing this home safety training, this was not, we talked about gun safety, but we didn't talk about drugs, drug paraphernalia, and that type of a thing. That being said, we had several of our home visitors who were in homes where they would ask questions at these trainings about this. And I will be very, very honest. Safe Kids is an expert in a lot of areas. Drugs, drinking, some of those very intentional things, while it may be an intentional exposure for children, it's an intentional act on the part of parents. That is not our wheelhouse. And we did not feel comfortable speaking to that. And so, as Tina said, we lean heavily on our experts in the law enforcement community who deal with this, because we understand that if, as home visitors, you folks are out in the home and you witness something that is suspicious or makes you feel uncomfortable, or you spot it, now what do we do with it? Those are questions that we as Safe Kids are not going to answer. And that's why we're really, really grateful for people like, Lance, who will share that expertise. And we added it into this training at the request of those home visitors, and knowing that they are the people that are out in those homes. We certainly don't want to be sending them into an environment to do home safety and yet not addressing their concerns, much of which were around this topic of drug paraphernalia and what do we do when we find it. So with that, Tina and I are both super grateful, Lance, that you're here to share your expertise with us today. And so thank you.
And please just let me know when you need the next slide, okay?
Perfect. Yeah, so I guess starting out, what we'll talk about is drug paraphernalia right out the gate, just to kind of make a point here. A soda can, right? Diet Coke can. Everyone's been in a house, they've seen it, right? Is this drug paraphernalia? Right now, no. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but technically, it's still not drug paraphernalia because it doesn't have any residue on it. However, this Coke can was just turned into a pipe for smoking marijuana, right? So there's all sorts of items that you can find in a home that taking the can again. What you'll see a lot of the times, people cut the bottom off for the bottom lid, essentially, and they can use that as a cooker for heroin, fentanyl, any drug that they're trying to inject. So drug paraphernalia can be just about anything at any time, and it's based mostly on the totality of the circumstances. Is there residue? Is there other indicative items that would make you think drugs are being used here? So I'm Deputy Lance Duncan. I've been with the Grand Forks County Sheriff's Office for 4.5 years, 4.5 years total in law enforcement. Currently, I'm assigned to night shift patrol. I'm a firearms instructor. I'm a less lethal munitions instructor. That's like the 40 millimeter munition launchers and then beanbag shotguns. I'm also an AR-15 armor. So one of my responsibilities is if our rifles break down, I fix them, I maintain them, other than, just general field maintenance. So funny thing, I have skunk there in quotes. So whenever I was in field training, my field training officer got issued a brand new squad car a few months prior to me being assigned to him. And my first hot call, if you will, it was a domestic in Emerado. I was driving 106 miles an hour and I hit a skunk, and I made his car smell like skunk for a couple of weeks. So I got the nickname Skunk at the sheriff's office because of that. And people still call me that to this day. So next slide, please. So a drug is any substance that, when absorbed into the body of a living organism, alters the normal bodily function. whenever people talk about drugs, they usually think about marijuana, methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, stuff like that. By this definition, caffeine is a drug. Obviously, alcohol is a drug. So the penalties for possessing a controlled substance in North Dakota, that's anywhere from an infraction for small amounts of marijuana for adults to felonies, depending on the amount or even the location that it's possessed. For instance, really any amount of a controlled substance inside of a correctional center is a B felony right away. And then obviously possession with intent to deliver or manufacture is a B felony as well. Next slide, please. So drug paraphernalia, typically that is going to be equipment that people use to ingest a drug. That's the way it's defined in Century Code. However, in common speak, I guess, drug paraphernalia is a little more than that. So you can also have paraphernalia that's used for the packaging and delivery of a drug as well. So, but I'll be honest, those two types of paraphernalia generally look different. For instance, a dirty syringe typically is indicative of a user. However, a bulk pack of designer baggies next to a scale, next to a wad of cash, is a little more indicative of someone that is selling narcotics or drugs, not just using. Next slide, please. So the pictures on the screen, the upper left-hand corner, obviously that's meth. That's what it looks like commonly. Those are pretty big shards on the bottom of the picture. So obviously, if you see something in a house that looks like that, there's a good chance it's meth. Next to it is it's the little Trump pill on the upper right-hand side. That appears to be either ecstasy or MDMA. On the bottom left-hand side, that is what's called on the street as blues or M30 pills. Those are essentially they're fraudulent prescription medication that, generally speaking, in our area contains fentanyl, and these are becoming a pretty big problem. I believe the police department just released a Facebook post. I think it was yesterday or possibly the day before, that in the city of Grand Forks, in the last 17 days, there's been 8 overdoses. A lot of those are attributed to the M30 fentanyl pills.
Lance, there was also a press release issued yesterday. A gentleman was arrested outside of Fargo with 10,000 fentanyl pills in his possession that he was trafficking.
Sure. And honestly, the thing that is really scary about these pills, there's a couple of things. One of the big things that's scary about them is just how small they are and how many you can fit and where you can hide them. I can't speak to specifics necessarily, but there was a stop that it was a tie-off baggie, essentially about the size of a golf ball, maybe a little bigger. And all of us were estimating, I think I had the highest estimate at the time on the side of the road, which was 500 pills in the bag, and it turned out to be 1,000 in the bag. So there's enormous profit margins for delivering these pills. These pills will go for $8 to $10 to $12 in Fargo, and if you drive them out to the western side of the state or even the central part of the state, they'll go for $80 to $100. So I mean, there's a huge profit margin for people to do it, and they're very easy to hide. But they're extremely dangerous because they're not. They're essentially mixed up and pressed by people that are not pharmacists. So the actual concentration of fentanyl in those pills is unknown until you take it. You could have a bag with 5 pills in it, and one of them will kill you, and the rest of them are fine, and you don't know. And then obviously the next picture is a marijuana bomb. Next slide, please. So this slide, essentially, this is just slang terms for weights that you'll hear people talk about. If you hear any of these terms, that's a pretty good indicator that people are kind of in the game. They know what they're talking about. Might be cause for alarm. An ounce, people call that a zip or an OZ. An eighth of an ounce an 8-ball or a ball, 1/16 of an ounce. People call that a t-shirt, a teener, or a shirt. A gram, people just call that a G or a gram. Half a gram is a half, quarter gram is a quarter, and then a 1/10 of a gram is a point, generally speaking. Next slide, please. So still, marijuana is the most common drug that we see. Now, with it being it's decriminalized for adults, it's an infraction, so it's not even an arrestable offense to have a small amount in North Dakota anymore if you're an adult. Common street names for marijuana: gas, green, tree, grass, smoke. Obviously, the controlled substance in marijuana is THC, specifically Delta 9 THC. Next slide, please. So this is something that is, at least in my life, has kind of changed. So whenever I got out of high school, I attended Musicians Institute in Los Angeles, California for a brief time. And going to a contemporary music college in Los Angeles, a lot of people smoked weed. A lot of people did. Now, even in a relatively marijuana-friendly state and city such as Los Angeles, specifically in Hollywood, that actual derivatives were not something that I saw very often. So this is what I'm talking about, the THC derivatives: shatter wax, oil, carts, and edibles. The most common that I would see out there was still hashish. However, these multiple stops, I find it's for a while, it seemed almost like I wouldn't find leaf or bud marijuana. I would find without finding the derivatives, right? Like I'd find wax quite a bit. So you can see in the pictures on the far left bottom picture, that is the wax, and butter crumble, a honeycomb. The center picture, almost translucent, looks to be hard, almost like a plane of glass. That's called shatter. And what's becoming really common are the THC cartridges. People call them carts in slang term on the street. We're seeing a lot of those now. What's different with these is the percentage of THC is incredibly high, upwards of 90% THC, which is nowhere near what your typical bud marijuana, actual, leafy green substance is measuring at. Next slide, please. One thing I wanted to kind of touch on with some of the major drug categories that we see is common indicators of ingestion, because most people that use drugs they're not dumb. So if you're doing home visits and you walk in and they know you're coming, they're probably not going to have drugs and drug paraphernalia sitting out in plain view. If they do, it's the stuff they forgot, probably, right? It's not most of it that they have. So you might be in a home with that kind of suspicion of like something just seems off here, and I don't know how to articulate it. And that's one of the common struggles that law enforcement officers have. They stop a car, and why is this traffic stop not like the 10 I just did before it? Why is this person being different? And it all comes down to articulation. What are you seeing, right? So with cannabis, many of the common indicators are listed below here: altered time, distance, and perception, alteration in thought formation. People have really weird thoughts, and sometimes you'll see that visualized in the way that they speak. They'll have weird sentence structure because they can have weird sentence structure just because their mind is not working the way that it normally is, unimpaired. Body tremors, that's a big one that we see, especially with DUIs when we're looking at marijuana or cannabis impairment. One of the big keys that we'll look for is body tremors on the person when we're running standardized field tests. Everyone knows about the bloodshot eyes with marijuana. That's a good giveaway. They could seem disoriented, drowsy, You will see eyelid tremors, generally speaking. However, that one's probably not going to be something y'all are going to see. We have a specific test for that roadside. And it involves a person putting their head back, closing their eyes, estimating the passage of time. You can observe eye tremors during it, or eyelid tremors during that. Increased appetite, obviously, everyone knows the kind of the munchies, right? That's pretty common indicator. And again, let's use common sense here. If you're in a home that people are smoking marijuana in, probably smells like marijuana in the home. So that's usually a pretty good giveaway as to, okay, there's marijuana use in the home. Next slide, please. Some alternatives to marijuana. The big one that I've seen now is Delta 8 THC. So Delta 9 THC is actually the Schedule 1 controlled substance at the federal level and at most state levels. Delta 8 THC is slightly different. And because it is slightly different, it's actually, as far as I know at this point, still illegal nationwide. You can buy it at head shops in town here. It, generally speaking, I've seen it, you can see in the upper right-hand picture there, it looks like marijuana. So if you're unsure, call us, we can come take a look. But it's kind of complicated matters with marijuana. Next slide, please. So LSD or acid. I know the slide says it's a common substance that we most often see. I'm not going to say that we often see this substance. I don't anyway. However, I have seen it a few times. The problem with LSD is it's incredibly easy to hide. As you can see in the bag there, that's a bunch of hits of acid. I guess I haven't even counted it out. That's 5, 10, 15, that's 20 hits of acid is what it appears to be in that bag in the photo kind of center of the slide. Right below that on the tongue, you can kind of see the size of a single blotter of acid. So a lot of times people will have it secured in like tinfoil just to kind of keep it away from skin contact. It's not, LSD is not necessarily transdermal, but it is absorbed through mucous membranes. That's why a lot of people back in the day, they used to put it on sugar cubes and eat the sugar cube, or they'll put it on blotter paper and drop it on their tongue. Next slide, please. So with LSD, and these are true with psilocybin mushrooms, a bunch of different hallucinogens. Common indicators: body tremors, dazed appearance. They can have difficulty with speech. Obviously, hallucinations in the name of the drug category. And those can be visual, they can be auditory, they can also be sensory. A lot of people describe the feeling that their face is melting or something feels like it's crawling on them. They'll see things kind of shifting in the way that they are in reality. So, you know, I've heard people describe like, I'm looking at a lamp right now, the lamp is breathing, kind of stuff like that. If you hear stuff like that, that's a pretty good indicator. You'll also tend to see, from my understanding, you'll see dilation of the pupils with higher doses. Could be sweating a lot, poor perception of time and distance. And with a lot of this, we talk about paranoia. Everyone's kind of heard the whole bad trip thing. It's entirely possible that the person could be kind of in a manufactured like mini crisis, right? Because they're taking a hallucinogen and they're having a bad reaction to it. Next slide, please. So this one's a big one in our area, methamphetamine. We see that a lot in our area. Common street names: meth, up, go, dope, and Tina. I haven't heard Tina too much, but a couple of times. But anyway, with methamphetamine, with heavy users, long-term users, you'll see a shift in their appearance often. So if you can see the picture on the far left there, inside of that picture, the bottom right picture, that's an earlier picture of the same individual. followed up by later pictures of him following meth use. And then obviously down below, same thing. On the far right-hand side, that's a glass pipe used to smoke methamphetamine. So common ways of ingesting methamphetamine are smoking. You can snort it. Personally, I've seen that one time where someone had some crushed up methamphetamine in a straw. Most people, it seems, don't do that anymore, at least from my experience. But another common way of using methamphetamine is injecting it. Unlike heroin and unlike a lot of other drugs, methamphetamine is water soluble. So you typically won't find the spoon with the burn marks on it or anything like that. A lot of times if people are injecting methamphetamine, you'll see methamphetamine residue inside the cap of the syringe because they will drop some methamphetamine in there, put some distilled water in, stir it up a little bit, and it will dissolve, and then it's fine for injection at that point. Next slide, please. So methamphetamine, it's a CNS stimulant, central nervous system stimulant. So with central nervous system stimulants, there's a lot of them. Cocaine is a central nervous system stimulant. A lot of the common ADHD prescribed medications are central nervous system stimulants as well. Medication like Ritalin, Concerta, Adderall, stuff like that, those are amphetamines. So it's not uncommon to see people abuse those. And that's another point to kind of hit on too, is prescription medication. Prescription medication is also dangerous in the home too, right? Let's say you have a family that kind of lives together with some older relatives, right? You have grandpa's pain pills in the cabinet in the bathroom upstairs. Good idea to kind of keep a tab on how many of those are still hanging around if you have older children in the home as well, because they may not be using them. They could be selling them. They do fetch a pretty good price on the street, but also the ADHD medication, like I said. So with CNS stimulants, you'll see anxiety, body tremors, dry mouth, exaggerated reflexes. Euphoria is kind of common with all the drugs. There's a reason people take drugs. Drugs make people feel good, generally speaking, at least for a while. Exaggerated, kind of over the top reflexes. They could seem excited. Grinding teeth is a big one. That's a pretty big indicator for, like, say, us on roadside on traffic stops. You stop someone and they're constantly doing this. It's called bruxism. That's a pretty common indicator of CNS stimulant use. Obviously, insomnia. If you just took a bunch of methamphetamine, you're probably not going to be able to sleep too well. And then irritability. You could see people have wild mood swings under CNS stimulants. They go from relatively calm to extremely agitated quickly. Next slide, please. Another one is heroin. So this is kind of our narcotic analgesic class of drug. It also covers fentanyl. So up here, a lot of the heroin is cut with fentanyl. By the time it makes it up to our area, it's not very pure anymore. It's been cut with additional substances to kind of bulk up the weight, to make it more profitable to sell up here, and then to kind of make it seem like it's better quality, they will cut it with fentanyl as well. So we have the little pills in the bottom right-hand picture. Up top, those are the M30 pills. That's not a good size for how big the pills actually are. The pills are smaller than an M&M. Like they're very small, and it's hard to, like I said, it's hard to detect them. A lot of times people are hiding them in body cavities on traffic stops, which is hard to detect roadside. Next slide, please. With narcotic analgesics, that's going to be your opiates or opioids as well. You're going to see depressed reflexes, droopy eyelids, drowsiness. A lot of people describe these as like people that are on the nod. So you'll see people they'll be sitting talking to you, and then all of a sudden they're almost like falling asleep when they're talking to you. That's a pretty good indicator. Most people are able to wake up if someone is talking to them, especially if that person is in their house now, right? I mean, most people would wake up and talk to you at that point. Dry mouth, facial itching, a lot of times with long-term narcotic analgesic use, such as fentanyl or heroin, you'll see scabs on the face for whatever reason. I'm not sure of the science behind it, but for whatever reason, people will itch at their face and pick at their face. And you'll see a lot of scabs on the face. That's a pretty good indicator in and of itself. That, you know, might require some further looking into. Inability to concentrate, and then nausea. Nausea, a lot of the times, that's kind of on the downside. So if someone is using a drug like heroin and they cannot get heroin, they get kind of referred to as dope sick. Kind of flu-like symptoms where they'll get really, really sick, stomach cramps, stuff like that. It's extremely uncomfortable, apparently. And this leads to a lot of petty crime, property theft, stuff like that, because people can't get enough money to get the drug. So they'll go steal something real quick, try to pawn it to get enough money to get the drug. Next slide, please. Cocaine. So cocaine is not super common in our area. However, in the bar scene, believe it or not, it's kind of making a comeback. Cocaine's always kind of been viewed as a party drug. So a lot of people will drink excessive amounts of alcohol and then use some cocaine to kind of level themselves out so that they can continue to drink alcohol. So in our bar scene in Grand Forks, there has been cocaine popping up. And honestly, again, the signs and symptoms of use that you would note are the same with methamphetamine, or very similar with methamphetamine. Again, I'm not a DRE. I'm not actually a drug recognition expert, but I believe the one at our agency would agree it would be in the CNS stimulant category. So you'd be looking for heightened irritability, you know, exaggerated movements, stuff like that. And obviously the dead giveaway with cocaine, if they got white residue in and around their nose, might justify some further looking into. Next slide, please. So ecstasy, MDMA, X, Molly, Skittles, beans are common terms for MDMA or ecstasy. It's a somewhat popular college drug. I haven't seen a ton of it up here, but I know that it is up here, and I've seen it a few times. Again, this one's a little hard to detect, just because the way that the pills are pressed. It can kind of look innocuous to some people, right? It almost looks like, if you guys remember, I think it's still around, Runts candy, similar, right? Or the old Flintstone vitamins. Like, it's really not. It's a little harder to detect. So if you're unsure, again, call law enforcement. We come take a look, possibly test it with a field test kit and see what we're dealing with. Next slide, please. So drug paraphernalia, kind of like I touched on with the can of Coke, it can be just about anything. It's the totality of the circumstances. What are the other circumstances surrounding it, right? A pen in and of itself is not drug paraphernalia. However, if you find just the tube of a pen without any ink in it, and it's sitting right next to tin foil that has burn marks on it, that's drug paraphernalia. More than likely, that's what's referred to as a tutor. So a lot of times the way people ingest the little M30 pill is a great example. The way people ingest it, if you can see the bottom left-hand picture, it's a piece of tin foil and it's got like a snail trail on it. Essentially what that is someone put a pill of some sort on that tin foil, and then they use a lighter to heat up the tin foil from below. The pill melts. As it melts, it emits fumes, vapors, and it also slides around the tin foil, and they will take the pen tube or a straw and they'll chase the pill around the paper to inhale the fumes, and that gets them high. So if you see a bunch of random tin foil sitting around places with no good reason, definitely warrants looking into why. And most people, you know, in a car, in a house it's a little different, obviously. But in a car, for instance, if you're talking to someone in a car, like that, most people aren't going to have a roll of Reynolds wrap in their car. So what you'll see commonly is they'll take a bunch of tin foil and fold it up pretty tight, and then they've got a ton of tin foil to smoke pills off of. Obviously, the picture right above it, that appears to be cocaine. It could be fentanyl. It could be China white heroin, but it's probably cocaine. And someone's just using a straw to snort that. In the middle picture, that's just like a little zipper pouch with some syringes. It looks like a little personal use drug kit. A meth pipe right next to that. And then next to the tinfoil picture, that appears to be a spoon with a syringe on top of it. And with the matches, I'm guessing it's alluding to heroin use, because you would have to heat that up to dissolve it and make it injectable. Next slide, please. These are more pictures of paraphernalia. A lot of times you'll see drug kits. So people tend to keep their drug paraphernalia together just for easier access. Just the other day, I found one that had syringes, bags with residue, and multiple little vials of naloxone, and then also Narcan and fentanyl test strips, all in like a lunchbox. So a lot of times people kind of group that stuff together. So next slide, please. So like I kind of alluded to, there's a difference, generally speaking, between user paraphernalia and dealer paraphernalia. So this is indicative of a user. Syringes, burned residue on spoons, a meth pipe, baggies with residue, small amounts of any drug, generally speaking, unless you're dealing with several packages, right, with small amounts in them, and they all kind of look about the same amount. That's different. But next slide, please. Again, more user amount paraphernalia. So if you see this, it's a sign that they're a user, not necessarily a dealer. Next slide, excuse me. So this is obviously a joke picture, but it kind of alludes to the drug kits we're talking about, right? It's drug kits are very common. A lot of people have them, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a drug dealer. Drug users have kits, you know, and they can be in anything. They can be in an eyeglasses case. It can be in a big metal tin like a lunchbox or something like that. Next slide, please. So like I said, the paraphernalia, depending on what exactly you're seeing, could kind of lead you to believe, hey, maybe I'm dealing with a person that's selling drugs or just using drugs. So a scale in and of itself does not necessarily mean someone's selling. A lot of people are pretty suspicious. A lot of users are pretty suspicious that they're being ripped off. So it's not at all uncommon to find scales among users because they want to make sure they're getting their money's worth. However, if you find a scale and a bunch of baggies that have the same amount roughly of drugs in them, just on a visual observation, and a bunch of cash and maybe a gun or two lying around right in the same area, and a bunch of empty baggies as well, like you're probably talking about a dealer at that point, not just a user. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're getting into gun safety. So firearms is an enormous passion of mine. Like I said, 2 of the certifications that I hold that I'm able to teach in law enforcement are firearms related. So with gun safety, next slide, please. There's the rules for gun safety. So, and a lot of people mischaracterize these as range rules, which I don't like that. I don't like that phrase. And the reason I don't is because it kind of implies that they only apply if you're at the range. They only apply if you're at the range shooting. That's not true. If you're in a room with a gun and you have to touch it, these rules apply. They're in your life now. They're omnipresent. They're always there. They always apply. So obviously, rule number 1, you need to treat every gun as if it's loaded. Right? A gun commands respect. It is a very dangerous implement if improperly used. and there are no takebacks with it. If you pull the trigger, the bullet's going to go wherever that gun was pointed when you pulled the trigger, and there's nothing you can do about it once that happens. Never point the muzzle at anything you're not willing to shoot. You want to keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Now, to kind of emphasize this point, we're going to talk about, I have several guns next to me here. We're going to talk about unloading guns and securing them. One thing that for whatever reason, and I've lectured cops on this, competition shooters on this, for whatever reason, whenever people unload guns, they're always tempted to pull the trigger just to confirm that it's unloaded. Pulling the trigger is not part of the unloading process. It's part of the shooting process. There's, generally speaking, with very few exceptions, no reason to pull the trigger on a gun if you're trying to unload the gun. No reason. If you're wrong and you didn't unload the gun, you just fired the gun. If you're right and you did unload the gun's still unloaded, whether you pulled the trigger or not. It does nothing for you. So I would highly recommend, don't pull the trigger on a gun unless it's pointed in a safe direction. And again, pulling the trigger is not part of the unloading process. And then obviously you want to be sure of your target and what's behind it. What that kind of means in our context is when you're handling a gun, you want to try to identify the safest possible direction you could point that gun in while you're manipulating it, right? So for me right now, I'm in my kitchen, or excuse me, in my dining room kitchen area, and nobody else is home with me. So I have neighbors to my right and left, and probably the safest direction would be towards the floor, towards my front door if I had to manipulate a gun. Especially if it was in fact loaded and I was trying to verify or unload the gun. Next slide, please. Different types of firearms. So the unloading procedures and the safe handling procedures vary a little bit based on the type of firearm that it is. The first thing I'll say is if you're unsure of how to handle a specific type of firearm, like let's say you walk into a room and this is sitting right on the bed. If you don't know how to unload this or to make sure that it's unloaded, don't touch it. Probably your best bet. It's not going to do anything by itself if you just leave it alone. Leave the room, make sure there's no one in the room, and leave it alone if you're unsure. If you have to touch it, most firearms will have information on them as to what they are. For instance, and obviously all the guns that I'm dealing with today have already been safety checked. There's no ammunition in the room that I'm in. But for instance, on this gun, it's a Glock model 45. So if you go into, let's say, go to Google and type, how do I unload a Glock 45, right? If you're unsure, there's plenty of great resources on the internet on how to do that. So our 6 main types of firearm actions are bolt action, lever action, pump action, semi-automatic, which would also, unless we're talking about like belt-fed machine guns, that would also cover fully automatic firearms. So that's the semi-automatic section. They tend to function the same. And despite popular belief, fully automatic firearms are actually legal to own in North Dakota and in the United States. They're very, very, very expensive, 30 to 40, sometimes up to $100,000 per. So they're not common to see, but they are legal to own if there's a tax stamp you have to get. Essentially, you have to go through a background check and get a tax stamp, and then you can own them. And then hinge action. A lot of times, hinge action firearms, that would be like most people think of like a double barrel shotgun. There's also single barrel hinge action or break shotguns. There are rifles that are hinge action, but they're not common. And then revolvers as well. Next slide, please. So with bolt action firearms, so the thing is, I don't have a trigger lock, unfortunately, to kind of demonstrate today, but I do have a cable lock. So this is what a cable lock looks like. With bolt action firearms, using a cable lock can be tricky. If you have a removable magazine, so if you can see in the picture, right in the bottom, underneath kind of that little silver part in the middle of the action of the gun, there appears to be a magazine. Little over to the right, sorry, yeah, right in front of the trigger guard there. Yep. So that in that area, it appears to be a magazine. If you can remove that magazine, you can open up the action and drop a cable lock through it. What a cable lock does essentially, and I'll demonstrate that real quick just so that we're all kind of on the same page on this pistol. What a cable lock does is it prevents, do it this way here, it prevents the slide or the action, essentially, depending on what type of firearm you're talking about. It prevents it from closing fully. So if the action of the firearm cannot close fully, most firearms have safety mechanisms inside of them that prevent them from firing if they're not fully closed in battery. On this particular firearm, the actual component that strikes the primer in the cartridge can't even reach the primer in the cartridge. So even if there was a live round in the chamber of this firearm, this would still be safe because it cannot fire. It also obstructs the magazine well. So if I take a magazine for the firearm, which is unloaded, it won't fit in the magazine well. So you could have a loaded magazine right next to this locked gun, and you would obviously have to actually secure the lock for it to be locked. But you could have a loaded magazine sitting next to the gun, and this would still be safe. There's no way to put a loaded magazine into the gun and actually make it fire in this condition. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, can you go back one slide? There's 2 points I wanted to hit on real quick. So with a bolt action rifle, if you're familiar with them, a lot of them have a little lever. So whenever you open the bolt up and pull it back towards you, they have a little lever where you can actually pull the bolt out of the action. You can use a cable lock on the ring that the bolt sits in, and it will prevent the bolt from being able to fit back into the action. That's another way you could use a cable lock on a bolt action rifle. But typically speaking, if you don't have a removable magazine in a bolt action rifle, I would recommend using trigger locks, which guard the trigger guard and prevent, they still allow you, generally speaking, to work the action on a bolt action rifle, but you can't pull the trigger. Next slide, please. Lever action rifles, similar to bolt action rifles. You're probably going to want a trigger lock on one of those. And again, this is all assuming that we don't have a gun safe in the home. The most safe way to store firearms in a home is unloaded in a locked gun safe with the ammunition and magazines for that firearm in a separate locked container. That's the most safe way. Now, the way I look at gun safety in terms of storage is it's degrees of safety. So, you know, in my opinion, it would be most safe to have firearms stored, obviously, unloaded in a safe, ammunition separate from the firearm. However, I don't necessarily think that it is unsafe to have ammunition stored with the firearm in a locked safe, depending on the circumstances, right? Like, for instance, my circumstance currently, I have a wife and 2 kids, a 3-year-old and an almost 1-year-old kid. I have a locked gun safe. I store ammunition in it with the firearm. At this point in our lives, I'm not worried about that. My 3-year-old isn't even tall enough to reach the handle for my gun safe, let alone know the combination for it. So at that point, I don't consider that unsafe. Now, as my kids get older, that's probably going to change in my life, just because now I know I knew the combination to my dad's gun safe whenever I was a kid. So the guns were a little differently once he found out that I knew that. So with lever action rifles, again, a trigger lock is probably your best bet, just because there's nowhere generally to put the cable to actually secure the action from being loaded and fired. Next slide, please. So with a pump action shotgun, depending on the type, you might have to kind of mess with it a little bit to make a cable lock work, but generally speaking, a cable lock will work. This is a Mossberg in the picture. Those have a shell lifter in the bottom that lifts a shell up. Most pump shotguns do. But the actual shell lifter on most Mossbergs has a cutout in the center of it, so it's super easy to drop a cable through. This is a Remington 870. This is actually one of the agency's beanbag guns, but it is still a functional shotgun. It's not any different. It would fire lethal ammunition if you put it in. As you can see, the shell lifter on this is solid. So how would you put a cable lock in something like this? So you'd have to first open the action. On most pump shotguns, there's a action lever. So right here in front of the trigger guard on an 870, this little lever right here, you have to push that up, otherwise the action's locked and it won't open. So you push that up, open the action. You would then inspect the chamber and make sure there's nothing in the chamber, nothing on the breech face, nothing in the magazine tube, and then you can lift the shell lever up, and that exposes a hole. I don't know if you can see that, a hole in the action that you can then drop a cable lock through. And then obviously I'm not securing it just to save you guys some time. But if you lock it, the action won't close. So you can't chamber and fire around. Next slide, please. Semi-automatic firearms. So semi-automatic firearms are some of the most common firearms in our country. They fire one shot per trigger pull. This pistol, so this is a Glock 45. This is my work gun. It's a semi-automatic pistol. This rifle is also my work gun. This is a semi-automatic rifle. The way that you unload them and verify that they are safe or unloaded is essentially the same. The buttons and the levers might be in a different spot, but the process is the same. Your first step, you want to remove the source of ammunition. So in this particular case, it's the magazine. On an AR-15, generally speaking, there's a button. I don't know if you can see the little square right about here in the receiver. That is the magazine release. If you press that, the magazine falls out. And I apologize, I shoot left-handed. I'm trying to do this right-handed for y'all just so you can see a little easier, and it's a little awkward, but the magazine comes out and it's unloaded. So the way that now you have the source of ammunition out of the gun. However, there could still be around in the chamber of the gun. So on an AR-15, you have a charging handle. It's this little lever right here. You need to pull that charging handle back. And if you see what happens when I do that, the action opens up. Now, on the other side of the gun, there's a little lever right here. You need to push that down and hold it. It's hard to see here. Try to do it. Push down the bottom and hold it, and that will actually lock open the action of the rifle. And then you would visually inspect the chamber, ensure there's nothing in there, inspect the breech face, ensure there's nothing in there, and inspect the magazine well, there's nothing in there, the gun's safe. On a semi-automatic rifle like an AR-15, you can then drop a cable lock down through the action and out the magazine well. And that functions the same as it did when I showed you on the pistol a second ago. That prevents the action from fully closing, so you can't actually chamber around and fire it. And again, it also prevents the insertion of a magazine into the magazine well. And just one more time with the semi-automatic pistol so I can kind of just walk through it. First thing you need to do, you need to take the magazine out of the pistol. So step one, you need to find the magazine release. On a Glock pistol, it's usually right behind the trigger guard. It could either be on the left or the right-hand side of the gun. Press that, pull the magazine out, store the magazine somewhere safe. I recommend when people are doing this, put the magazine in your pocket. Magazines like to find magazine wells on guns, and it's not unheard of for someone to be handling an unloaded gun, grab a loaded magazine, put it in the gun, rack it, and pull the trigger. Don't do that. So then obviously you would need to lock the action open, or at least open the action to verify that it's unloaded. I always recommend locking the action open, just it gives you more time to look into the gun to make sure that it is unloaded. To do that, you need to touch this little lever right here and push it up towards the top of the slide. So being left-handed, I do that with my trigger finger. I come up with the knuckle and I push it up. So if I were to just rack the slide right now, it wouldn't lock back. However, if I push up, and this lever is actually ambidextrous. So I'm going to be pushing up with my thumb just so you can kind of see how the lever works. So now the slide is locked open. That allows me to look into the firearm, see that there is in fact an empty chamber. There's nothing on the breech face, and then there's nothing in the magazine. And then you would again do the same thing with the cable lock, drop it down through, secure it at the bottom. This would prevent a magazine from being inserted, and it also prevents the slide from closing and firing around. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, I don't have any break actions to show. I don't have any double barrel shotguns or anything like that. However, they're very simple. I'll tell you right now, generally speaking, if you have a cable lock, it's not going to work on a hinge action. There's probably a way you could figure out how to do it, wrapping it a bunch of times between the top of the action and the trigger guard, maybe, but you're probably going to want an actual trigger like shoe safety that will sit in there. And I have a picture of one of those, and you'll see exactly what it is if you're unfamiliar in just a moment. Next slide, please. Revolvers. So with revolvers, you can absolutely use cable locks. If it is a common modern revolver, obviously these are two odd pictures of a revolver. They're pretty old, but a modern revolver, the cylinder on the revolver is bored all the way through. You can actually take the cable and run it through one of the chambers in the cylinder, and it prevents the cylinder from going into the frame, which prevents anything in the cylinder from lining up with the parts of the gun that actually fire the gun. So locking this through one of the chambers in the cylinder would also secure it. You could also run one of these through the barrel and lock it. And a lot of people won't do that just because they're worried about over time it damaging the barrel. Next slide, please. So again, these are common gun locks. Obviously, upper left-hand picture, that's a cable lock just like this. The other two are trigger locks. So the trigger locks, those are pretty universal. Those will work on most guns. Now, I would recommend, obviously, don't trust the trigger lock. I've seen this happen. I used to work and I used to sell guns, and there are some trigger locks that do not fit the gun that you're trying to put them on properly. And if you don't tighten them down properly, you can still move the entire trigger lock and function the trigger by moving the entire trigger lock. So they need to be secured properly. If they're secured properly, you can't move them easily without unlocking them or loosening them. And they'll either require a combination, like the top picture on the right-hand side, or a key. But yeah, again, I would recommend to people to have a gun safe, or at least a locking cabinet that is not easily opened, that they leave their guns in. If that's not a possibility, I know gun safes are expensive. These are cheap. So this cable lock, we actually have these at the sheriff's office. This exact one we have at the sheriff's office. Most brand new firearms come with some way to secure them. Usually it's a cable lock, or it could be a trigger lock. So if you go to Shields and you buy a firearm, in the package probably has a locking device with it. You could probably go to Shields and ask them, and they probably have a bunch laying around. They might sell you one for a few bucks, or they might even just give you one. So again, if people don't have a gun safe in their home, and that's the concern, these are pretty readily available, and they can be brought out and given out. I know the sheriff's office has quite a few. I'm sure the police department has some as well.
The sheriff's department provides them to safe kids, and we do hand them out as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Next slide, please. This is my contact information. Feel free to take a picture of it, write down anything, the email, the phone number. That's my work phone number. If you have any questions for me that you're not willing to ask right now, that's fine. Other than that, this is the time for questions if anyone has any.
Well, and Chantel earlier asked about ecstasy and whether we do see it. And you were saying before when we covered ecstasy that it's not super common in our area. Is that Is that right?
I have not seen it a lot. Now, some of the people with the Grand Forks Narcotics Task Force or with the Police Department Street Crimes Unit might have a better opinion than I do. Again, I am a road deputy, so I drive around in the dark and stop cars essentially. So my firsthand knowledge is whatever I've pulled out of a car, whatever I've helped people pull out of a car, whatever I've found in a home, generally speaking. So that there is more in the area than we have found. I'm sure of that, but it's certainly not, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, it's not as common as methamphetamine or fentanyl or marijuana for that matter.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lance. And if anybody has any questions, they do have your contact information. And we just really appreciate your time. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So Karma, when we're moving on, are we going to go back, Karma, or do you want to continue on going
Yep.
into poisoning?
Either one is fine.
Okay, well, how about if I do this? I'm going to backtrack, you guys, so be patient with me just a second, because we did skip a couple of small things to get us out on time for lunch. And what I would really like to talk about is some household dangers that are less common. Button batteries, TV tip over, high-powered magnets, and water beads. One of the things that we do offer as a resource for you is furniture tip over straps and things like that. This is really important due to a lot of our furniture being attractive to children for climbing purposes. We may have toys or interesting things, tablets, televisions on top of dressers and tables that may be a little bit unstable either by design or by use. So they can easily tip over and cause injuries. Television tip overs are very common. It's something that does happen regularly. So if you think about televisions, even though our TVs have gotten smaller over the years, they are still very heavy. And when we're talking about toddlers, there's a lot of potential for injury. Go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment about the furniture tip overs. There was a new law enacted by the federal government that took place this fall called the Stable Act. And it requires that furniture companies do very rigorous testing on their products on surfacings such as carpet and with certain weights and stuff like that in them to make sure that they are not tip overable in an easy format. They're also required by law to come with the mounting strap that Tina is talking about, where you can affix that piece of furniture to the wall. We oftentimes hear from people who are apartment renters or home renters. They're worried about putting something into the wall. I guess I would say, yes, you might not get your $100 deposit back, but knowing that that piece of furniture is attached to the wall would be a good peace of mind for me as a parent. Maybe they can visit with the apartment complex owner or the homeowner to say, I have small children, I have this piece of furniture, a bookshelf, a dresser, whatever that's tippable. What would you recommend that I do for mounting it? Because I think homeowners, if they know and understand why there are holes in the wall, they'll probably be a lot more lenient than just, well, I got, neglectful and I got mad one night and put a baseball bat there or something like that. So just because they rent a property, don't assume that you can't affix those items. And please look to see if they are mounted, particularly as Tina mentioned, those dressers where they have drawers that kids can pull out the drawers and use that as a step, or a bookcase. If you've got a bookcase, try to keep the heavier objects down low because again, anything where there's levels, kids have a tendency to climb those. So really important that they're affixed to the wall and that heavy items are on the low part of the object.
Right, exactly. And then another tip for dressers is having stops in the dresser drawers so that they can't be pulled out very far to become overstable or to be a step stool for a child. Um, Flat screen TVs, I know a lot of our flat screen TVs are coming with safety straps in the box, but that is something that you can buy either at a store. We do have them here in the office. The old style tube TVs that we might still remember. Um, First of all, we don't want people to place things on top of them. They need to be pushed as far back on a stand as possible, and they really should be on a low, very stable stand. When we are in a household with children and toddlers, pedestal tables and that kind of furniture, um, as sort of unstable as it is, that can be a real risk for children. It's not necessarily recommended. Um, and then any of that heavy, tall furniture, bookcases, and that sort of thing, like Karma said, you should start seeing newer furniture routinely coming with straps, but it is well worth going to the hardware store and getting an aftermarket strap for those pieces of furniture. We do have some TV tip over, furniture tip over information, including a really wonderful couple of displays that you can use at booths and in your clinics to kind of show the risks. The one at this very bottom corner here, we actually utilize an egg and kind of show the risks of that TV and that furniture tipping over. Um, and then here's some materials that you can request from us as well. Karma mentioned earlier about the risk of button batteries. Button batteries are a huge risk. As we know, small children, toddlers do tend to swallow things frequently. Oftentimes, if we're talking about something like a coin, as long as the child didn't choke on that item, if you call the doctor, and say, hey, they swallowed a penny, they're just going to encourage you to keep an eye on them and to monitor to make sure that that penny comes out the other end in 24 to 48 hours. Unfortunately, with button batteries, they're roughly the same size and shape as a coin. However, the saliva can actually break down the seal on button batteries and cause severe burns. And we're talking about a very short amount of time that permanent damage can start to occur within 2 hours. So if a child has swallowed a button battery, it is imperative that the parent gets that child to emergency services as quickly as possible. Button batteries are found in a lot of different products. Unfortunately, because we have such, interesting products like books that read to kids and greeting cards that sing to kids, we see them in a lot of products. Now, if a button battery is in a product that's meant for children, if it's in a toy, it is required to have a covering that is screwed on. So it needs to be not only covered, but also screwed in so that you need a tool to get at it. But as you see on the screen, these are a lot of products that kids tend to come across in our households or play with that are not typically meant for children, but they're readily accessible. Our bathroom scales, they're in the bathroom all the time. Sometimes I see parents hand their toddler their car keys because they like to pretend to drive the car, while they're in the shopping cart or something like that. Like I said, greeting cards. Grandma sends them a greeting card that sings their favorite song. These are all venues to very easily access button batteries. So it's really, really important that we talk to families about keeping those up and out of reach, making sure that they are secured, having remotes put up away if they contain button batteries and that sort of thing, not letting kids play with our keys. We do have a lot of resources about this. It's really, really good information out there. I actually will have a link that I'll add for you. It's, I believe it's Energizer has put out some information regarding button battery safety. So it's well worth a look. Another toy that we have seen that can cause some real problems is those high power magnets. They're typically marketed as fidget toys or stress relievers. Sometimes adults will have them on their desks for kind of, desk toys or fidgets. One magnet is, typically not going to cause a lot of damage if a child swallows it. They're fairly small. While a child could choke on it, oftentimes it'll just down the hatch and it'll come out in a day or two. The problem comes from when a child swallows more than one of them, because then these high power magnets will, of course, be attracted to each other. And if one magnet is in one part of the intestine and another is in another part, it can actually attract to each other and start causing some severe internal damage because of the magnets pulling and potentially causing death to the tissues that they are compressing. So these high power magnets can be very, very dangerous. I believe Karma is going to cover a little bit deeper when we talk about poisoning our laundry pods. But this is something that I am very, very passionate about. Laundry pods are extremely colorful. Oftentimes they don't resemble a cleaning chemical of any sort. And they need to be kept up and away because children can get a hold of them and can ingest them. They're really dangerous for the same reason that they're really, really effective. They're highly concentrated chemical inside of that pouch. And while it's really good at cleaning our clothes, it's very, very convenient. If a child gets it into their mouth and pops it, first of all, it kind of sprays out when it's breached, and a child may be surprised by that. Oftentimes, we will see a gasping reflex. And when they gasp, oftentimes they will end up inhaling some of that highly concentrated chemical, leading to severe lung damage and issues. We encourage families to keep them up and away, out of sight. One of the challenges that we are finding is with some TikTok trends and things like that, people are taking their cleaning chemicals like their laundry pods and taking them out of the brightly colored labeled containers that they are purchased in, and they're putting them into lovely jars and things like that to make their laundry room look nicer. But what some of the laundry pod manufacturers have done is they've taken on a challenge to keep those products a little safer for children. First of all, they've made the casing around the chemical thicker and made it bitter tasting, but they've also done some massive improvements to their packaging, making them harder to open, making them a little more child resistant. I never say child proof, but child resistant. When we take them then out of that packaging, put it into nice jars, what we're doing is we're taking away those safety features of the packaging. We're also taking away all of the information that is printed on the back that we may need to provide to poison control should there be an issue of the child ingesting it. So we always say store, not decor. So if you want it to look prettier, maybe put that orange jug into a basket, but don't dump them into a jar. These are some of the resources that we have. Like I said, a lot of the companies have taken on that challenge to make their products safer, which we appreciate. One of the companies that's really taken the charge is Tide. So I know that Safe Kids Worldwide has partnered a lot with Tide to make a lot of really, really good educational materials for families. And that's some more of the resources that we have. Karma, did you have anything to add to that?
Nope, I think you did a great job.
Well, since we're talking about poisoning, I'm going to move it on over to medications and turn it over to you.
Perfect. Well, as a nurse, this is a topic that, as Tina mentioned, was passionate to her. This one's near and dear to my heart. And part of it is because as a nurse, I have spent my entire career sending medications home with patients that might help them with a cardiac issue or a pain or allergy or blood pressure, or, you name what it might be. And while medications are certainly something that are helpful to many, many people for many, many reasons, medications are now the leading cause of poisoning in children. And so that in and of itself it kind of makes my stomach a little bit ill, because the very thing that we're sending home to help patients are the number one source of hospitalizations and injuries and things like that for other age populations. So we're going to dive into poisoning as it relates to both household chemicals and medications today, but I really want to put a lot of emphasis on medications because of it being the leading cause of poisoning in children. Next slide, Tina. These are some of the things that children are poisoned by, medications being the number one, household products, lead, and carbon monoxide. And we talked about carbon monoxide already earlier today, so we won't dwell on that anymore. Next slide. So we talked also this morning about how children have faster metabolic rates, and I kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, a young child, if they get a pill in them, your response time needs to be much quicker than if an adult got a pill that didn't belong in their GI system, because their metabolic rate is so incredibly fast. And they metabolize things quickly, and so it gets into their bloodstream a lot quicker. We also talked about the curiosity of kids that makes them very at risk, and we'll show you some slides here in a minute of what that might look like. Next slide. This statistic to me is very, very sad, that every year more than 40 kids die from unintentional exposures to medications. These are all things that could have been prevented. We as adults oftentimes contribute to those deaths by leaving things out and about that should be stored up, out of sight, out of reach. But I also think as healthcare providers, and I don't know how many of you on the phone would rank yourself in the healthcare provider arena, but here's what I would say. When you're talking with your patients or your clients about medications, we need to talk not just about how to safely take that medication. You know, many times my conversation with the patient would have been, hi, my name is Carma, I'm your nurse. This is the medication you're going home with. You're going to take it in the morning and in the evening. It's important that you take it on a stomach where you've got food in it. If you have any of these side effects, please contact your physician. It's important that you take your whole prescription. If you have any questions, you can call your pharmacy or your physician. I'm going to show you how to give this medication, and will you show me back? Do you have any questions? And we probably ended our conversation there, when in fact, I probably should have continued that conversation to talk about safe dosing, so how to give that, safe disposal. So if it is, for example, a patient that's going home with pain pills, that maybe out of the bottle of 30, they take 10. What do they do with the extra 20 of them? How do they get rid of them if they don't need them, so that those are not sitting around the house? I'm going to tell you that, you know, as a Safe Kids coordinator, I want those medications to be disposed of because they're a poisoning risk. Deputy Lance, that was on just a little bit ago, probably would say to you, you know what, we live in a day and age where people are seeking drugs. They're hungry for them. They will break into homes. They'll break into cars. They'll break into dorm rooms. They'll steal out of purses when you're standing in a line at a hockey game or something like that. So both from the unintentional consequences of medication exposure to the intentional exposure, we need to do as best as we can to get those medications out of the home. Do we as healthcare providers talk about it? How to dispose of them. And then, you know, I think it's really important that we talk safe storage. You know, I get calls frequently from the county who will say, I have a grandparent that we are placing 2 children in their custody. You know, the parents have been incarcerated. I need to get them a car seat. And when those parents come to me to get the car seat, I will also say things like, do you have medications in your home? Do you have a place to store them? Is there a way you can get rid of any medications that you're not using? Where do you store those medications? You know, are they up and out of sight and out of reach? And so I really think that we as providers need to get the public thinking more about medications, not just as something that is good for our body and our health needs, but something that can also be a poisoning agent as well. And until we start thinking about it as a poisoning agent, I don't know that we will have the respect for the care and handling of those products that we need to until we think of that medication or that helps supplement as a poisonous product. Next slide. This image to me really makes my gut sick. Every 9 minutes, a child goes to the ER because they got into a medication. Most of those are children under age 6, those that are young, curious, explore, learn about their environment by putting things in their mouth. Every hour, a child is hospitalized because they got into a medication. And every 12 days in the United States, a child dies because of getting into medication. These are not youth that are taking them intentionally with suicide attempts. These are the ones that are unintentional. And so for the fact that every 12 days a child dies because they got into something that I, as a nurse and healthcare provider, am sending home with my patients, that tells me that I need to do a better job. I do presentations every semester with every nurse that is leaving our College of Nursing and launching their nursing profession, imploring them to not just talk about how to take the meds and what they're for and, you know, that kind of thing, but that safe storage and disposal and dispensing. Next slide. When you think about medication, I think it's important that you think not just about pills, because meds come in many, many forms, from injectables to creams to ointments to liquids. In a minute here, you'll see a X-Lax that's a chocolate bar. It looks like a Hershey's bar. So you need to think of medications, you know, as inhalers, any mode by which you could take that medication in. And so when we talk about medication disposal or storage, be looking around the home, not just for things that are in pill bottles, but is there an inhaler on the bedside stand, or a diaper rash ointment that's on the bottom of a changing table or in a diaper bag? And think about talking to the parents or caregivers about safe storage for those. Next slide. So what does safe storage mean for medicine and cleaning products? It means keeping it out of sight and out of reach. Well, what does that mean? Well, for my 5-month-old grandson, I could probably keep medications just about anywhere in the home. He can't get into things. But that being said, he'll soon start to crawl, and then he'll start to scoot, and then he'll start to pull himself up against things. So something on a coffee table may not be safe. Something on the ground in a purse or a suitcase of a grandparent that might come to visit over the Christmas holiday might not be safe. Once they get to the age, look at this little guy. Mom might have something up there on the counter that's multivitamins, or, you know, maybe a prescription she's on, you know, post-surgery or something like that. This little guy is getting creative. He is going to use those kitchen cupboards as a step stool, and he's going to find a way to get up. Yesterday, it might have been Rice Krispie bars up on that counter. Today, it could be medications that he gets into. So out of sight and out of reach is really dependent on that child's age, developmental level, and kind of their curiosity level. And what you need to be doing is that anticipatory guidance for the people that you're working with. So if today the child is rolling over, think about what the next stage is that they're going to enter, and then child-proof, not for the age and stage that they're in, but the next age and stage that they're going to. So for example, I don't want to walk away from my grandson's changing table and all of a sudden see him flying off of that onto the floor and go, oh, shoot, I didn't know he knew how to roll over, right? I, in my mind, need to be thinking that, wow, the next stage or the next trick that he's going to do is roll over. And I need to be prepared for that stage, not necessarily what they're in right now. So out of sight and out of reach for what is coming up next. Next slide. When we're talking about out of sight and out of reach, I want you to think of not just medications that are in a medicine cabinet, but if you look on the bottom row here, you'll see the flipper dispensers. And I will tell you that as a nurse, I have many, many times advocated for those for patients, particularly if they're on a lot of meds, maybe they've got some early onset dementia. They are, you know, on a med that if they take it two of a pill at breakfast because they forgot that they already took it, could have untoward consequences. So those are good to help with organizing meds. But that being said, they oftentimes have no child-proof or child-resistant cover on them. They're just a simple flipper door. And so I remember when my nieces and nephews were little, my mom had a tendency to take the pills, and she'd organize them for my dad in that Sunday through Saturday flipper door system. And he had some he took at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And she would take them out of those and set them on the end of the counter. So as he walked by the counter to go to the table, he'd grab his pile of pills. Now, that being said, I said to my mom, you can't keep them there. There's little hands and little eyes and little mouths around here that could get into that. And she said, if I don't leave them there, your dad's never going to remember to take them if I leave them up in the cupboard. I said, put a sticky note there. Put a piece of candy there. I said, put them up where you store the butter or the salt and pepper. No good Norwegian is going to eat a meal without their butter and their salt and pepper. Do it in a way that you can be mindful to him, but not dangerous to the other little people that might be living or visiting that environment. I want you to think about purses or backpacks. I'm not going to call anybody out, but how many of you, raise your hands, have a purse that has a little travel size container, maybe with some Tylenol or some allergy meds, or, you know, maybe it's, vitamins or a supplement or something like that in it. And we keep that in our purse. And that purse in a new environment, be it from a babysitter or a guest, or maybe it's in a clinic setting, somebody that opens your desk drawer. Imagine, the things that they could get into. Think about traveling. Sometimes we'll have people who contact us about wanting to get find out the car seat laws. They're going to Disney World for Christmas, and they're going through several states and want to know what the car seat laws are. And I'll have a conversation with them about, on your travels, are you going to have small children staying in a hotel with potential medications in that room? How many of us don't take meds along on the chance that we get a bad upset stomach or a headache or a toothache or whatever that may be? And, maybe dad's out starting the car and getting the snow cleaned off and packing stuff up while the kids are out and about in the hotel room, and mom jumps in the shower. Have you thought about how you're going to secure those meds? In a home environment, you can put locks on the cabinet. In a travel environment, maybe they're just in your zipper overnight bag. We do have some things we're going to show in a minute that I recommend as an option for travel, so that you've got those meds in a locked capacity, so that they don't become a danger in that hotel room. If you have guests coming for the holidays, think about putting them up on a closet shelf or something like that, so that kids don't see something new and intriguing in their home environment and decide to explore that. Next slide. When you're talking about storing medications or cleaning products, we do not need to put locks on every single cabinet in the home, but locking up the ones where there are dangerous substances, such as medications or cleaning products or knives or that kind of thing. If a kid gets a pot and pan out and takes it out of the cupboard, or empties out the Tupperware cupboard, no harm, no foul in that case. So think about which cupboards can you consolidate things in, so that you have cabinet locks just on the ones where there are dangerous items. Now, we're going to talk here in a minute about having cabinet locks available for you to get from us. We are we're always going to ask the question, what type of cabinets do you have in the kitchen? For example, this one that you see on this image, you'll see that it has two knobs that open that cupboard door that are close together, and we have a sliding lock that goes over it, and then you slide a piece down to affix the doors together. Sometimes cabinets do not have any hardware on them, or they have hardware on them that is spread apart further. Maybe your pull on it is in the middle of the door, or they're not close enough together to get a slide type lock on it. Then we would need to use a different type of a mechanism or closing mechanism. So if you are requesting an item like this from us, it's important to know what type of hardware we are working with on that particular cupboard. The lock spot that you see here, and Tina, will you go to the next slide as well? This one here is actually one that we have in our office available. They are $13 on Amazon. I have provided these to people to use who were going on a vacation to put pills in and use for their trip. But we have also used these in the homes. I'm going to give you an example of a story. I got a call one day from a clinic in our community, and they were working with a mom who had a 5-year-old who was on a medication, an ADHD medication. She had a younger child in the home, and they had a 19-year-old, and the mom was noticing that the 5-year-old's ADHD meds were disappearing faster than she felt like she was giving them to them. And she realized that she felt like the 19-year-old was stealing the medications. Now, she had taken them and tried to hide them. And in her apartment, where she hid them was underneath the box spring of the bed. There was a tear in the fabric, and there was a ledge of the support bar that went across that bed. And she had put that bottle of pills up underneath the bed on that little ledge. Well, lo and behold, one day the younger child was playing with Matchbox cars or something, some toys on the ground, and it went underneath this bed. Child crawled under the bed to get it, and when he was under there, the pill bottle in its hiding place got knocked down. So it was now within sight and reach of this young child, who came out from under the bed with a Matchbox car and a pill bottle. We got a call because clearly they needed to secure those medications in a way that the 19-year-old could not get into them. Apartment being a very small environment, we resorted to this med locked box so that they could store it up and hidden underneath the bed on that support bar. But if it did in fact get knocked over, that the meds would be safely contained within this device so that the younger child could not get it. And so that was our kind of our creative solution to that. You will see on the far right the different types of devices that we have for locking cupboards at our office. The kind with the slide lock that you would use if you have hardware on the door, that you could put that over and then slide that middle piece up down over. Or the kind that is on the far right, which is used, for example, on drawers or on cupboards where there is no hardware to do the sliding kind on. We have all of those items available in our office. Next slide. I tell this story because I think it speaks to why it is so critical that we make our home environment safe. Even the best of parents cannot watch their child every minute of every day. And I'm going to tell you a story that kind of speaks to that. This was a friend of mine, a gal that used to work for me in our pediatric department at Altru. She went on to be a nurse at our Grand Forks Public Health Department. And I share this story with her permission because she has actually written newsletter articles about this for us. She had built a new house in East Grand Forks and was looking to landscape around her home. She asked one of her colleagues if anybody had any perennials that they wanted to share for her garden. And one of her colleagues brought her one day this little snack-sized Ziploc bag, and it had 5 little seeds in it. They looked a lot like watermelon seeds. And she gave them to my friend Danny, and she said, "You don't have any pets or dogs at your farm, do you?" And she said, "No, why?" She said, "Well, this particular plant, well, it's beautiful and it'll look great on the south side of your house." She said, "It is toxic to dogs." So my friend Danny drove home, and on the drive, she started thinking about that more. And she thought, well, I don't have pets, but I have small children. I'm not sure I want this plant growing along my house. So she got home. Her 4-year-old daughter was in the back seat. She hadn't said anything about it to her. And when they got home, Danny took the Ziploc bag out of her purse and she threw it into the garbage. Again, not saying anything about it to her young daughter. Her young daughter had said she was hungry. So Danny took a carton of Easy Mac, added water to it, put it in the microwave, and set the timer for 2 minutes. She proceeded to go to the bathroom, in her bathroom, went to the bathroom, washed her hands, came out, and the timer had not dinged yet. It had been set for 2 minutes. And all of a sudden, her little girl said to her, she said, "Mommy," she said, that jelly bean was awful. And she said, "Jelly bean? What are you talking about?" And her daughter went over to the garbage and she got out the Ziploc bag, and instead of there being 5 seeds in the little envelope, there were only 4 of them in there. And Danielle called the poison control helpline. And when she did that and described what it was, the person on the poison helpline said, I want you to get in the car and drive as fast as you possibly can to the closest ER. And she said, I will call ahead and let them know that you're on the way. The child could hemorrhage to death. You need to get there right away. So they did, and got there, and her little girl ended up with an overnight stay at the hospital, and vitamin K infusions because of what she got into. Now, this was a seed, it was not medications, but it speaks to the story or the point that Danielle was an excellent mom. She wasn't doing bad things. She didn't lay down and take a nap and let her kids run unattended around the house. She wasn't leaving drug paraphernalia out and about. She simply went to the bathroom, washed her hands. We have to do laundry. We have to shower. We have to, put groceries away or make supper. We cannot have our eyes on our kids 100% of the time. So it is incumbent upon us as parents to make that environment as safe as we possibly can. So it doesn't take a long time for these kids to get into things. And in fact, in the study done by Safe Kids Worldwide, that's what most of them said. It was just a minute that they were out of my attention. And so it speaks to why we need to childproof that home in a way that makes it a safe place for kids to live and grow and learn and play. Next slide. We talked about the study that was done by Safe Kids Worldwide. Most parents also said, you know what? My kids climbed up onto something. I thought that the stuff was out of sight, not out of reach. And that's why I say you need to know your child and think about the next stage that they're going to. Because by the kitchen sink or on the bathroom vanity or on the kitchen windowsill may be fine until it's not. And we never know when those kids are going to develop that ability or that tendency to want to climb in and get into places where they may be able to get into things. They can push over a high chair, a kitchen bar stool, a Tonka truck that can all of a sudden be something that they can use to climb and leverage themselves up onto that shelf. So again, out of sight, not out of reach. Think about what that might mean. Next slide. Tina mentioned child resistant versus child proof. There is no packaging that is actually child proof. It's called child resistant. And what it basically means is it doesn't say that no kid's going to be able to get into it. All it's intended to do is simply slow them down. As a nurse, again, I have oftentimes said to my patients that have maybe weaker hands or poor finger dexterity, you can oftentimes take a prescription bottle cover and tip it upside down. So one side, it makes it child resistant. The other side makes it so that it is easily screw offable. And older people may need to do that. But that being said, they then need to be even more vigilant about where that's stored because kids can and will get into it, even if it is child resistant. One year, we did a story for the news station where we took 4 kids ages 4 to 7 and I put 40 bottles of pills out on a table that had a child resistant cover on it. And what I did is we had the TV camera filming this, and we told them, the kids, to try to get into the pill bottles and open them. And within 5 minutes, all 40 bottles had been opened by those children. So it's not going to keep them out of it. It's just going to simply slow them down. So even though the parent says, well, the child,
Carma, we lost you. Okay. Unfortunately, Carma may be having some technical difficulties. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we're very, very cognizant of the fact that child resistant just gives you the opportunity as a parent to catch up with that child, and it basically gives you time as it slows them down in getting into that product.
Tina, I'm back. Can you hear me
Oh,
now?
great. I can hear you now. Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened, but I logged off and logged back on. So
Good.
thank you for picking up there. But so don't rest on your laurels, thinking that, oh, it's fine, it's in child resistant packaging, because kids will be able to get into it. Next slide. So I've told you to put stuff out of sight and out of reach, and people will say, but I'm going to forget about it, just like my dad did. Put a note up, set something out. Talk with your clients about putting an alarm on their phone. We had a situation, I was giving this presentation to a group of nurses one year, and a nurse from Altru said to me, she said, Carma, I have to tell you a story that happened. She goes, I never thought about the alarm. She had a young boy that was on meds that he took at bedtime, and she picked him up from daycare that day. He was kind of fussy and irritable and tired and whatever. She was going to work a 12-hour shift starting at 7 o'clock that night. So she took him home. She gave him a bath, fed him supper, and she gave him his med that he normally took at bedtime. Well, she went to work, and about 9:45 that night, she was walking down the halls of the hospital, and all of a sudden she went, oh my God, I forgot to tell my husband I gave him his bedtime meds. So she called her husband. He ran into the bedroom and tried to arouse the young boy, and could not get him really to wake up and respond, because he had also given him the same medication when he went to bed and double dosed him. Well, that little boy got brought into the ER and got placed on observation and monitors because of the side effects and consequences of that that pill that he was on. And so what they did is, rather than having an arbitrary take this medication at bedtime, they actually did two things. They set an alarm on their phone, and every night at 7:30 was med time rather than, quote, at bedtime. So that was one thing they did. Whoever was with the child at 7:30 was responsible for giving the med. The other thing they did is they pulled out a tracking device, which we'll show you here in a minute, that they checked off. They kept with the prescription bottle, and they put a check mark that it had been given. And she said, I felt horrible. I'm a nurse. I should have thought about it, and I didn't. So take out that phone, show your clients how to use an alarm on their phone, put it on your calendar, do something other than leave those medications sitting out and very visible. Next slide. Another group of people that are very prone to medication overdoses or poisonings are those that are the teenage groups. These are the kids that are of the age that are starting to self-medicate. They may go to sporting events where they're taking pain medications. They may be young ladies with menstrual cramps where they're medicating. And we oftentimes, as caregivers, do not do a good job teaching them how to read the label, how to give the medications. And oftentimes, you might have a med that is two different names to the med, but it's the same active ingredient. And so, one day a young girl may have menstrual cramps. Her mom gives her 2 pills and says, here's 2 more. You can take them again in 4 hours. Next day, she forgets to send the meds. Her friend gives her a pill, and the young gal thinks, oh, I must take 2 every 4 hours. So she takes that and does that 3 times that day. And they're actually a pill that they're supposed to take 1 every 8 to 12 hours. Again, they've just over medicated themselves. So it's really, really important that we teach these teens how to read labels. The next slide shows a really great tool that has been created. It's an OTC literacy project that was done by Scholastic, like the book order club that you're all familiar with. And they have created this fabulous website that has excellent. This is a poster that talks about reading labels. They have activities and videos and letters to go home with parents, and a curriculum for kids to do in a health class. If you have an activity that you're asked to come to a farm camp or a school and do a presentation, this OTC literacy campaign has fabulous materials online, and I would encourage you to look that up and check it out. And maybe Tina can even put that in the chat box, the link to that, because it is a fabulous resource geared for kids kind of that 5th through 8th grade. Next slide. One of the other things we need to do besides storing medications safely and taking them safely, part of that includes using the dosing mechanisms that comes with the liquid medications. I know in my house, I have a kitchen on my main floor and I have a set of silverware that has soup spoons and teaspoons. I have a kitchen in my basement also off of my media room, different set of silverware, teaspoons and soup spoons. One day I took my soup spoon or my teaspoon from downstairs and my one from upstairs, and I realized that even though they're both called teaspoons, the one downstairs holds almost twice as much liquid in it as the ones upstairs do. So just because a utensil that is like a plastic spoon or a kitchen spoon says it's called a teaspoon does not mean that it is actually how that medication should be dosed or that it's an accurate measurement. So make sure that you use the dropper or the liquid cup that comes with it. Now, if you are providing medications, it's important that they know, for example, on this, you'll see the pink medication up to the 10 mil mark. I, as a nurse, may take a Sharpie marker and draw a line all the way around that marker because number one, if it's elderly people, it's difficult to see those markings. But also, a lot of times you give that cup to somebody and they think, well, they gave me this cup, I fill it up, right? When in fact, you dose it based on that person's age and weight and condition. And so it's really important that we know how to give those medications safely. So whether that be children in our home, elderly people in our home, or whether that be a babysitter that comes in or kids going to childcare, really important that we show them how, and then we have them repeat how to do it, and we put mechanisms in place that would prevent any error in dispensing that medication. Next slide. This is a document that I referred to that the nurse put into play. If you see or you have a family where there are children that are taking medications, particularly where, you know, maybe mom has them in splits custody with dad, or they're in foster care, but they go to the parents' house for the weekend or something like that, where there's a lot of handoff of care. And there could be that potential for not communicating that, oh, I gave the meds, right? This is an example of a medication schedule. We have pads of these in our office that you can request from us. You can go online and print something out. You could make your own, just a tablet of paper with simply the child's name, the date, the time that it was given. I especially recommend these if it's a single parent where they're maybe exhausted, a new mom, where they're up feeding through the night, if they've got twins and they're trying to, you know, can easily confuse, did I give twin A the med or twin B, or it all kind of starts to run together. Something simple like this would be a great tool that you could use, and you can get these from our office. If you scroll through this slide, Tina, it will pull up some of the things that should be on that document if you were to make your own. All right, next slide. This I told you we would talk about in this presentation. This really, pardon me, but it pisses me off that manufacturers do this. The one on the right are fruit snacks. They come in a pack of 20 or 30 of them. The one on the left are actually gummy vitamins. Now, I want you to think about how confusing that is for a young child. They're the same shape, they're the same color, they're the same taste and texture. And you know, I can eat 30 of the fruit snacks as a kid, but I can only eat one of the gummy vitamins, and yet it's something that looks almost exactly the same. To me, that's very, very confusing for young kids. And I really don't like that kind of process. But I don't get to be the one that regulates products like that out on the market. So my job then is to teach parents that things like this need to be kept out of the sight and reach of kids. We one time were in a home with a friend of mine, and we were going to film a button battery television commercial, and she had 3 young daughters, and all of a sudden the youngest one, the 2 older ones were going to be in the commercial, and all of a sudden the younger one, about 2.5, comes walking out of the kitchen carrying a big 250 bottle of these gummy vitamins. And when we started talking about where they stored them, they kept them on the second to the bottom shelf in their pantry, right where the kids could get to them every morning for their breakfast. Well, that's fine for the 7-year-old, maybe, question mark, but not so much for the 2-year-old. And so it's incumbent upon us, again, to be really mindful of where those things are stored, because they are very confusing. Next slide. This is another image that shows this whole, is it medicine or is it candy? Here the companies have made sore throat pops to look like suckers, which are a candy. Here we've got the Get Better Bears, which are sore throat relief, that not only are they a sucker, but let's make them into a cute little teddy bear. And let's make them grape, because what kid does not like grape, right? In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the Hershey bar is the one on the right. An X-Lax bar is the smaller one on the upper left-hand corner. And if a child got into that, how confusing would that be? And while the child is not going to die because of taking a whole X-Lax bar, I can tell you mom and dad or caregivers are going to have a really, really, really miserable night should they have a child that gets into that. So again, this whole concept of making medicine to look like candy, it does not sit real well with me. Let's go to the next slide where we're going to talk a little bit about edibles with THC in it. And these are becoming very, very popular as more and more states legalize these. Tell me here, how many of you can tell which ones of these have THC in them and which ones are candies? Very confusing, right? Especially to a young child. Again, THC laced gummy bears, very common. They're sold on counters in many of the stores in states where these are legal. So again, making sure that you know where those are at. They're not in the glove box of their older brother's car or their babysitter's backpack or, you know, mom's purse or whatever the case may be. Next slide. You'll see the website here where we got these images, this T4CIP. They have some great resources. These would be some social media posts that you could certainly share on your pages. This has information about which states have legalized recreational marijuana versus legalized medical marijuana, which is the case in North Dakota. Minnesota recently legalized recreational marijuana. And then you'll see the states where there is no legalization of either one of them. But I will tell you that since we have had an increase in the number of states that have both legalized recreational and medical marijuana, we have seen an increase in the number of calls to poison control centers. And so it's really important that people pay attention to that and know where those are being stored. The locks are important. Again, we talked about that, keeping them up, out of sight and out of reach, and certainly secured in, be that a vehicle, be that in a home, whatever that environment may be. Next slide. Now, I talked about the importance of getting rid of medications that we are not going to be using. This is really, really, really critical because number one, medications, number one cause of poisoning. Number two, homes are being broken into. A colleague that used to work with us, he's now since retired, but his neighbor's house was actually, came out one morning, was gonna fill up the coffee pot for breakfast and noticed a hole punched through their window in their kitchen. And they could not figure out what it was. They went outside to do some investigating to see if it was a rock or a stone or what it was. And what had happened is the wife had stored the husband's prescription medications on the windowsill. So they remembered to take it when they filled that coffee pot in the morning. Somebody had come by to break into the house, whatever the case may be, looking for something. Don't know what it was, but happened to see prescription bottles, punched a hole through that window, grabbed those prescription bottles out. When they realized that it was only a cardiac med and a diuretic, threw the pill bottles on the floor outside on the ground. But that being said, it speaks to the fact that people will break into homes. Several years ago, my son-in-law's uncle passed away. We went over to the funeral in Bemidji, and we offered to take the flowers over after the funeral. And we asked the widow how we would get into the house. And she said, I have somebody at the house monitoring it while we're at the funeral. And that struck me as a little bit funny until later in the day, she started talking to me and saying that they had had a rash of house break-ins of people, unfortunately, looking at obituaries where they would see so-and-so passed away after a long and courageous battle with cancer. The funeral will be on Friday at 10 a.m. at this church. And drug seekers, assuming that people were gone from the home, were breaking into homes looking for things that this cancer patient may have been on for end of life things, be that fentanyl patches or narcotics or that kind of thing. And so the more we can get those out of our homes, the better. And so we do need to talk with our families about safe disposal. So we never, ever, ever, ever want to flush those medications down the toilet. There are many, many, many more medications out there in the market. And they're in our homes in huge amounts, both over the counter and prescription. And so we don't want to put down the septic system because it gets into our water, but instead there are a couple of things that you can do. We here in Grand Forks host 5 Med Take Back events each year, in which we do 3 of them in the Hugo's parking lot, right along Columbia Road, right across from the hospital. And it's a drive-up, drop-off event where the public can come and drop off their medications. You always have to have a law enforcement officer there, because it would be illegal for me to just take narcotics from somebody and dispose of them. You cannot do that transfer. It has to be done by a pharmacist, or it has to be done by a law enforcement officer. The other thing is we do not want to advertise these events saying, hey, we're doing a Med Take Back event on Columbia Road, come drop off your meds, and have Tina and me standing out there, and all of a sudden somebody walks up and points a handgun at us out the car window and says, give me everything you've collected so far. We don't want a drug seeker to do that. So we always have law enforcement there with their vehicle. Their vehicle is very visible, so people know that there's law enforcement there and don't do something such as that. These events are held 3 times a year in our community in that location. And then we also do it twice a year at our Grand Forks Senior Center, knowing that we sometimes have people that come there for lunches, maybe don't get out and about and drive themselves around, but do get to the Senior Center. We have the new flyers. They were on the slide just prior to this. If you would like a copy of that, please let us know. It does show on this year's poster what kind of medications we accept at that, and then what those dates are. I would also say that if there are people here that are from a community where you would like to host a medication take back event, put that on your resource sheet that you are keeping. Reach out to Tina and me, and we will visit with you about what you would need to do to set something like that up. If you go to the next slide, you'll see us doing our Med Take Back event at the Senior Center, where we're there to do talk about safe storage. We have our little look-alike display, and then we have our law enforcement officer there. Go to the next slide. This is another option. There are many, many locations. Our Attorney General's office in North Dakota has started a Med Take Back sites, and they have them in Minnesota as well. In Grand Forks, they happen to be in the law enforcement building downtown, the UND Police Department, and the East Grand Forks Police Department. But these are in many, many pharmacies and law enforcement centers all throughout North Dakota and Minnesota. If you look at that bin right inside the door, it's almost like a mailbox. And you simply go up to the bin, you open the door, you can drop your meds in there. They can stay in their original containers. You don't need to take the labels off. And those medications are simply taken away and incinerated by our law enforcement officers. Next slide. This side has the links, and again, you can find these on our Safe Kids web page, but if you go to this link for North Dakota or Minnesota, you'll be able to find all of the locations throughout the state that have these drop-offs. This is an example of the take back locations just in the state of North Dakota. I think there's around 90 of them. So if you are in a community and you're out in a home or visiting with your clients and you want to help them figure out where they might be able to access a drop box, this would be a great link to keep in your favorites in your computer, so you can pull that up and simply say, oh, they do it at the drugstore just down the street, or something like that, and help them out. Next slide. This is an example of what the box looks like that are in many of the pharmacies around the state as well. So that's just another example of what those boxes look like. Next slide. This is an example of how you might be able to get rid of medications if you can't get to one of those 2 drop-off activities that we do, or one of the drop boxes. You can take the medication out of the container and put it into a Ziploc bag, and then add water to it so that the liquid or the pills or the cream or whatever it is starts to dissolve and get mixed up with the water. And then take a non-consumable substance such as dirt or kitty litter or sand or sawdust, used coffee grounds, and put that in the bag to make it so that it is non-consumable, and then you can seal that up and throw that away in the garbage. Now, I will tell you, we have a partnership with the Grand Forks Public Health Department here in town, and Michael Dulitz, who runs a lot of the medication programs for the county, and he is able to order us, and I know he's able to order them from the state. So many of you may have access to be able to do that also. If you would like more information on how to order, they're essentially a detox bag. They come in a small, medium, and a large size, where they you put the meds into it, and it's got like an activated charcoal in it, and that serves kind of that same purpose. If you're in the Grand Forks community and would like to get some, we have all 3 sizes available at our office. If you are from another location around the state and would like to find out where Michael orders those, put that on your resource and reference sheet, and Tina and I will follow up with you on that, and get you in touch with that. And again, these would be a great option to have if you were going to do a med take back event also. Next slide. This is the link to that OTC medication thing that I showed you that had the poster of the how to read the labels. This is the link down on the bottom of this that you could look up how to do training or education to middle schoolers or those 5th through 8th graders, if that is something that is of interest to you in your community. Please feel free to use that link. All right, next slide. Oh, clearly I had a joy saved in my thing. I was going to copy that link, and I had a joy image. All right, so these are some of the things that we have available to you to use. This display on the left is very large. It takes 2 people to kind of carry it, but in there are 2 lookalikes, one that is a medication and one that is something that is non-consumable, like a glue, or you'll see in the top right, there's a kind of a Powerade like thing that looks much like nail polish remover, or down here in the bottom row, the second square, Good and Plenty's and allergy pills, or grape juice and a cleaning product called Fabulosa that looks exactly like the same bottle and the same consistency. The thing on the right is actually, it's a long stick that we have that has little plastic containers in it, and it's cotton on the bottom, and on one side you'll see a piece of candy, and on the side right next to it you will see the a pill, and how they look alike. And so we use that and pass that around a classroom for students to look at and see how similar those things look like. All right, next slide. This is an example of some poison safety. We have displays, the one on the left about medications, the one on the right about e-cigarettes. We also have available through our office, or we can direct you if you're from other areas of the state, how to get poison control center magnets or stickers that could be put up on a refrigerator or a kitchen cupboard or a bathroom vanity. While each of you are here, I don't think we have this in the slide presentation, but if you have a cell phone, I would like each of you to take your cell phone out for me for a minute. And I would like you to do something for me. I would like you to go in as if you're going to send a text message. And in the to line where you would put in your coworker or your husband or your kids, in the to line, I want you to type in the number 48, 48, 48. In the spot on your text message where you would type in the message, honey, I love you, or hey, should we go out for supper, or pick up milk on your way home, whatever, I want you to type in the word poison, Poison, and I want you to hit send. What you should receive back is going to be a text message that has the contact information for the National Poison Control Center. This is an 800 number that you or your clients can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week about anything, medication, poisons, insect bites, animal bites, whatever. And these poison control centers are staffed by toxicologists, paramedics, nurses who are trained in medication or in poison prevention and intervention. And if you or your clients ever need help, it's a free resource and a place that they can call anywhere from in the United States. So please program that number into your phone. Next slide. These are some great resources. The one on the left is medication safety for grandparents. It's on our website, or is somebody says, is that the right number? Haven't gotten anything back. Just wait a minute. Sometimes it does take a little bit of time to respond, but yes, it is. It's 48, 48, 48. And I just did it with the whole classroom full of nurses the other day, and it worked for them. So unless there's a glitch in the system right now, it did work the other day when I did it with the nursing students. So there is this form number here, the one in the middle that has that data about every 10 minutes a child goes to the ER, every hour they get hospitalized, and every 12 days a child dies. And then on the right, you'll see a form about e-cigarettes and the dangers of those. Next slide. Did anybody get the number to work? Give me a thumbs up. I'm not getting a response here, but not yet, it says, not yet. Okay, so it should be text POISON to 48, 48, 48. All right, let's talk real quickly about household cleaners. Tina, if you want to go. Most of us store our cleaners in our kitchen or our bathroom or our laundry room. And if you think about that, those are rooms that little children have ready access for. They're in going to the bathroom, washing their hands, they're in the kitchen eating. So think about where those things are stored and think about how you may be able to put them in a different location. On this slide, you'll see that an emerging issue is that of laundry pods, and Tina alluded to that they've become very, very popular because we can compact very, very concentrated chemical into the pods that are smaller in size than a big container. So we're using less plastic to fill the landfill from the big storage bottles that they're in. We are it's handier, it's less messy. That being said, think about where you store those. Maybe under your kitchen sink, if you've got a dishwasher. All these front end washers oftentimes are put up on a drawer that to elevate them up to make loading and unloading a little bit easier. And that drawer is oftentimes where those the dryer sheets and the Tide Pods are stored. And we are seeing an increase in the number of children that are going into the ER because of getting into these products. While kids are not necessarily dying of laundry or detergent pods, what we are seeing is children that are suffering from what's almost like a chemical pneumonia. They put those pods in their mouth, they chew on them, they're bright and colorful, and the next thing you know, that explodes and it bursts, and their reaction is much like that of a balloon. They gasp and they inhale that very, very concentrated detergent into their lungs, which gets into the little alveoli in the lungs and causes essentially like a chemical pneumonia. And so we have had kids that have had to, there was a young boy that got life flighted down to Sanford at one time, was on a ventilator for 5 days because of that chemical type pneumonia and that damage to the lungs. So keeping those up and out of sight and out of reach is really important. And on the next slide, you'll see that since laundry pods kind of came out, there's more than 10,000 ER visits in that short period of time between 2012 and 2014 because of the popularity of those. Next slide. Again, think about how those chemicals are stored. Again, under sinks, not a great place. In kitchens, not a great place. And then think about the colors, the bright colors of them, and how many of those bottles are not child-proof or child-resistant. Again, also making sure products are stayed in their original container. And I say that because, you know, you might go to Sam's and buy a big gallon jug of window cleaner that's a bright blue or a purple, and you take it and put it into individualized spray bottles, put one in your car and one in your laundry room and one under your sink and one at your lake place. And now all of a sudden a kid gets into that, they drink it. You have no idea how much was in that bottle. It's not in its original container. So when you make that call to the Poison Control Center, you're not going to have the information needed for reporting what it was that they consumed. Next slide. Here you will see some of those laundry pods, detergent pods, again, mixed in with candy. Those that are laundry pods have a little star on them. But again, set that alongside of candy and look how similar it looks for inquisitive little kids and minds. Next slide, and you'll see the same thing. There's that Fabulosa. It is a cleaning product. It smells beautiful. It's sweet. It's got fun flowers and rainbows on it. It's purple. It's in a jug. It looks nearly like the Gatorade bottle. So again, very, very dangerous, very confusing to young children. Next slide. Again, these are some of the products, the pink, the blue, the purples, very confusing. Next slide. There you've got Lysol up against Gatorade, or you've got Pine Sol up against apple juice. You've got a Gatorade up against car wash. Here's some more of them. The Zicam comes in those plastic or little paper tubes, similar to what drink flavors come in, the individual packets to flavor your water bottles. So again, very, very confusing to young kids. Next slide. So these are some of the reasons why children have been hospitalized because of laundry pods or cleaning products: difficulty breathing, excessive vomiting, severe eye burns and irritation, temporary vision loss, and loss of consciousness. Next slide. These are the laundry pods we're talking about. And if you go to the next slide, you will see when Tide came out with these, they were very eco-conscious, and they were trying to respond to the ability to make smaller plastic containers that weren't as heavy. They didn't have to be as thick of plastic. They could be smaller. They didn't intend that this was going to be something that kids would get into. But when they started getting into it, Tide was one of the first companies to step up and say, this is not what we expect of our industry, and we're going to fix it. So here's an example of what they did. They put their products into the containers that have super wide covers on them. And we talked earlier about lighters having to have two mechanisms of action at the same time in order to get it to light. That's the same thing with these covers. You have to have large hands that can push the tabs on either side of this very large circle. And that helps prevent little hands from being able to do that. That being said, Tina mentioned that a lot of people follow this whole HGTV, let's make our laundry room cute and fun and sexy and whatever, and they decant those and they'll put them in an apothecary jar or baskets up on the counter rather than keeping it in its original container. When you do that, you take away that child protective mechanism. So I encourage people to keep them in these containers with the cover on. The sticker that you see, we have lots and lots and lots of these in our inventory in our office. If you would like that to put on a washing machine in an apartment complex or in your colleagues or your clients' homes, reach out to us and we will send those out to you. Next slide. The liquid laundry packet industry has also done some work. One of the things they did was they started to add the child-proof top that we talked about. Some are going to be the covers, some are going to be zippers, where you kind of have to squeeze and pull at the same time. So again, keeping them in those types of decanters or bottles would be important. The other thing they did is they have started to make the packet, the clear packet that concentrated detergent is stored in, bitter tasting, with the idea that if a young child were to put it in their mouth, it would taste bad and they would hopefully take it out of their mouth. The second box on the bottom, you will see where it talks about they have a delayed dissolution of the product, so that if they do keep it in their mouth, their saliva doesn't break it down really super quickly, but instead it takes longer, with the idea that hopefully that really bitter taste will kick in and have them get it out of their mouth before that packet starts to dissolve. And then the other thing they did is they required the packets to be more squeeze resistant and handle stronger pressure points, so that if a child bites into it, it's not going to so easily burst in their mouth. So again, the industry is doing their work, but it is incumbent upon us to teach parents about these dangers and what they can do to help create a safer environment. Probably don't have to lock up the laundry cabinets if you keep the stuff in its original container. But again, getting that messaging across to parents is important. Next slide. These are the incidents of liquid laundry packets. You'll see that the number was on the incline, but they did start to do more with the packets and the bitter taste and all that. And rather than that trend line going up, it is now on the downward trend, as long as we can get parents to keep those products in those containers. Next. And this just shows that these products are getting safer and safer, but again, that education of keeping them in their child-proof container is important. Next slide. This shows an example of where parents are, oh, this looks really cute, my purple little scent boosters, or my detergent in the decanter jars up on the counter. Better to keep it in its original container than to do that. Next slide. This shows keeping those products up high. And then the next slide shows getting that poison control center number into your phone. It's a 1-800-222-1222 number. And that is a number that is the same all across the country. Next slide. When do you call it? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If the child is non-responsive, or they are seizing or not breathing or something like that, that's when you would want to call 911 instead. Go to the next slide, and that's got the poison helpline number. I'm not sure if you guys ended up getting it to work or not, but if you did, maybe take a screenshot of this, and I would save that information in the notes section of your contact on your phone, so that you can easily help your clients to program that number into their phone. Having that in there is really important. When you get that contact information back from the Poison Help Center, you should also get a website that you can go onto, and on that website, it has the 800 or the website that you can go to, and you can do an online conversation with the online people that are at the other end of that phone number. So next slide. Household plants. I am not going to try to be an expert on what plants are poisonous, but I will tell you, I get a lot of calls at my office of people who will say, can you tell me if this plant is poisonous? I had a new baby, and my family member sent me a plant, and I want to know if it's okay for my toddler to be around it. I have no idea, but you know what? Call that 800 number for poison control, and they will be able to walk you through that and tell you that information. Tips for household plants, I would say keep them out of children's sight. If they are poisonous, get them out of the house. And then find out what items can be around children and pets. Next slide. Lead poisoning. As a nurse, over the years, we had many calls where they were admitting a child to the hospital because of high lead content. These are children that will become confused, maybe lethargic, and oftentimes this comes from living in an environment where there is peeling paint on the wall, or there is old furniture that may have been painted with lead. Kids that have an old crib where they're chewing on the crib. We had a van who came to town one day. They had moved to the state. They were put in a low-income housing unit, and the kids, they did not have a lot of furniture or things within the home, and so the kids were kind of left to just run around. The little toddler was looking out the window and was chewing on the wood around the windowsill, and they later found out that it was lead paint that had gotten into the system. There are ways that you can do lead testing. You can go to the next slide. You will see that tells you that in 1978, lead was banned in paint, but any homes that was built or furniture that might have been painted prior to 1978 likely has lead-based paint in it and can be very dangerous. If you are wondering about it, there is an 800 number that you can give to your clients, 1-800-424-LEAD, and they can get more information, and you can also get testing kits from there to have it checked. The next slide will show you the signs and symptoms of lead poisoning, and I won't read them all. You can read those. Next slide. If you are around lead, be that from pottery, be that from paint, furniture, whatever that may be, wash your hands frequently and try to avoid having those things in the environment, particularly things that kids could chew on or eat off of. Next slide. Next slide. We're going to talk real briefly about electronic cigarettes. These have grown in popularity and are incredibly, incredibly dangerous. These items are targeted at young children. They come in a variety of scents and colors and shapes. You will find that oftentimes they're very popular amongst high school, junior high, college age kids. And so if you have teens in the homes of clients you're working with, I would be very cautious with the parents about what's in their backpack, what's in their bedroom, what's in their car, what's in their glove box. What does your babysitter have when they come over? Rather than saying to the babysitter, do you have any of these products in your backpack? Maybe asking the babysitter to simply put the items up and out of sight and out of reach on a shelf or a coat hook. If you go to the next slide, you'll see what a lot of these products look like. They're bright, they're colorful, they come in flavors that smell and taste good. They have a charger that is used to charge up the heating unit that then aerosolizes the liquid. If you look on this slide, it will tell you that 1 Juul, that's a brand name of these e-cigarette cartridges, contains the equivalent of a pack of cigarette or 200 puffs. There is enough nicotine in 1 teaspoon of the liquid syrup that goes into these electronic cigarettes. I will tell you that you don't have to just inhale it. You can swallow it and get nicotine poisoning, or you can get it on your skin and it will absorb through the skin, and you can have signs and symptoms of nicotine overdose. If you look at the next slides, there is reports that over 2 million middle and high school students currently use these. In the past 30 days, 1 out of 35 high schoolers and 1 out of 9 high schoolers have used this. And the number of people using it is on the increase every day, as are the number of calls to the poison control centers. So it is critical that you're talking to parents and caregivers about these products. Next slide. This will show you the signs and symptoms of electronic cigarette poisoning or overdose, it's the same as a nicotine overdose. And I'm again not going to read all of these, but it would behoove you to know and understand these signs and symptoms and what needs to be done. And ultimately, essentially, you need to get these kids to the ER because they need to be monitored and they need to find out how toxic they are. Next slide. Why are kids using it? It's part of the way they're marketed. They see peers using it. They have a parent who uses tobacco products. Again, kids do what they see, so that adult role modeling is something that leads to use of these. Availabilities of flavors. They taste good. Let's be honest. Cigarettes kind of smell. They maybe have a taste that is an acquired taste, but these have fruity flavors. Skittleberry, mint bonbon, lemon, razzleberry, things like that that actually taste and smell good. And so there are lots of reasons why they use it. We need to find ways to keep it out of their hands. Next slide. How do they obtain it? Some of them get it from older youth. Some of them get it from their parents. They'll steal it right out of the bottle. Some get it in their friend's home. Some are ordering it online. Next slide. What can you do? Set a good example. Quit tobacco use. Learn about the different mechanisms in which these are stored and sold and used. So if you see them, you know to get them out of sight. Talk to your teens about the harm from e-cigarettes. Many of them think they're not as dangerous as cigarettes, and they are equally as dangerous, and even more so if you think about how toxic that nicotine is. And then seek help from a healthcare provider. Here are lots of resources. Again, I'm not going to read those. We won't put those in the links. But that being said, there are lots of resources out there about e-cigarettes. I did show you a flyer that we have earlier that you can use. We also have examples of these products, these vaping devices at our office, if you would like to use them for doing any education within the schools or with Girl Scout groups or things like that. All right. We are at a point where we're going to talk about doing a home safety checklist, and we're close to getting done. We will take questions at the end, but let's dive into this part. For those of you that are going to do a home safety checklist, when do you do it? It may take you several visits to get through a home, depending on the educational level, the availability of how much time that client has, how much time you have, how big the home is, how many issues you identify, how much education you need to provide along the way. But our hope is that as you're going through and doing that home inspection, looking for things, that you'll think back to some of the education that we have provided you today and have it be not just about, oh, they need a baby gate, oh, they need a poison control sticker, oh, they need a cabinet lock, but what is it that you could be providing them about education? So this oftentimes happens over several home visits. What do you need? The first thing I would say is you need a copy of this home assessment tool. This is one that we will email out to you. It gives us a baseline data of what is in the home, what type of an environment are we looking at. And then Tina will flip through the slides that goes room by room and will show you some of the things that we're looking for. It will prompt you to things that you should be talking to them about. You know, have they created a 3-foot zone around the sink or the stove? You know, have they got their medications up and locked? Have they got a fire extinguisher? So as she goes through each of the rooms, you can see where there's a lot to cover, and it may take several visits to conduct this home assessment. Then it gets down to the end where it starts talking about home safety devices. Tina, can you go back to the last slide? And you will see on there, I'm not going to tell you that we have every one of these devices. We have some of them. Reach out once you've done a home inspection and say, could you provide this for us? In order for us to provide these to you and to your clients, you need to pick them up, or we need to get them sent to you in our office, or however we can get them to you, and know that you are going to be the one bringing them to the client's home to install them, not saying, oh, I'm sending a client by to pick these up and hope that they get them put into the house. That's not the way it works. It needs to be in your hands and your responsibility. If you have new people that join your office that are going to be doing these home safety inspections, our expectation would be that they watch this training as well, so they know not just about, hey, let's put cabinet locks on, but what else do we need to be teaching, and why are medication dangers an issue, and what are those medication locks, are those cabinet locks good for? Not only knives, but laundry pods, medications, e-cigarettes, cleaning products. You know, we don't need to put them on every cabinet, but we need to put them on some, things like that. And so when you're done with this home assessment, we will have you email this to us with an email saying, could I get these devices from you? Now, if you are working with a client, don't assume that they can't go out and buy themselves their own 9-volt battery. We do not need to provide everything. We certainly want to be here to help, but I don't have an endless supply of money or home safety devices. And so if the parents can have a little bit of skin in the game by, you know what, I can go out and I can buy a carbon monoxide detector, but I need all of these cabinet locks and this. Work out how they might be able to help with providing some of those devices as well. You also might want to visit with their landlord. There are some things that they should be responsible for. If they have a balcony and the slats are wider than that 3.5 inches that Sarah talked about, maybe they'll add slats to it, or maybe they'll be responsible providing a net to go around that. They should be responsible for a fire or a smoke alarm in that building. If there are lead paint issues, they should be responsible for the maintenance of that, the maintenance of the furnace that we talked about, things like that. Once you have completed that checklist, we'll have you email that safekids@altru.org is an email address that comes, it actually comes to me. I'll direct it to whatever one of our team happens to be available in the office, can pull those items together. Usually we have them all in stock, but sometimes people will say, I need a dowel to put in a track of a sliding door. And I'll say, how many inches do you need it? We have a 36-inch dowel. We can get that cut down for you, but it may take a day or two to do that. So we will email you back and say, Sarah, I just wanted to let you know I have all the safety items that you want available and ready for pickup. So email us and then wait for a response back. So if you're meeting with your client, don't say, oh, I'll get these devices tomorrow and I'll be right back. But if you are going out for another visit, when you send that email to us, if you could say, if I could have these items before next Tuesday, I've got another home visit with the clients. Could I please get it before then? That would be really helpful to us as well. Next slide. So pickup and installation. I said they're going to be picked up in our office unless other arrangements are made. That is by the person doing the home assessment. The client should not be sent to pick them up. We had somebody send a client by one time to pick up items. We didn't know about it. They showed up and it was not at all just a pickup of the items. It was about a 2-hour education on how to use them, all the education that we were counting on the home visitor to provide. Not that we can't provide some education, but certainly our staff need to know about that so they can set aside that time to give that client the time that they need to get that education. Determine a time to go back to the client's home. Consider if you'll need tools. If you're putting up a smoke detector, those can't be put down low or plugged in with a carbon monoxide detector. They need to be put up high. Do you have a screwdriver? Do you have a ladder? That kind of thing. And then are there concerns about damage to a wall if you're going to put on a furniture anchor piece, or you're going to sometimes we'll put a hook and eye on a bathroom door to keep kids out of a bathroom. Are there issues about damage to property that might be there? And so maybe having to have that conversation with a landlord ahead of time. Next slide. We have lots of really creative ideas that have come up. Jolene Canine was the first person that went to Washington, D.C. with me. She works for Grand Forks County, and she used to work for Healthy Families, and she has done a lot of home visits, and she has found some really creative ways. For example, she was in a home and they knit, and the mom had tons of yarn. Rather than do cabinet locks, the mom just tied the cabinet shut with yarn. Didn't get into them that often, and she said, I got lots of yarn laying around. If I need to get into that cupboard, I'll cut the yarn and I'll just add a new piece onto it. That was a better solution. It worked for the mom, and it was certainly something that was very, very cost effective. So there are great ideas that come from the field. We've had people who have taken swim noodles and cut down one side of it and put it around edges of things. $1.25 swim noodle, lot less expensive than buying corner devices or things like that. So it doesn't need to be expensive. It could be creative. And if you have questions of how do I solve this issue, give me a call. If we haven't dealt with it, I've got my phone of friends, my Sarah Myers and my Kate Gold-Daddies and my Jolene Canines and people in a lot of great places that will come up with an idea or do some research for you. Next, this is another one. We went out to a home one time in Crookston, and we did a home visit, and mom was trying so hard to keep her kids safe. And when we went in there, it was really cute. She knew that she needed cabinet locks. She didn't have them. We had not been introduced to her yet. She had taken a grocery sack bag and cut it into strips and had used that to tie around the cupboards. Now, we obviously gave her cabinet locks, but I gave her a ton of credit for trying really hard and caring deeply about those kids in her care, that she came up with a solution to try to make that environment a safe one for the kids that were in her care. Next slide, it talks about thrifty and effective. Here's an example. We used to get requests from people that they wanted a toilet latch. Well, number one, they're about $14. Number two, we found that kids couldn't get them undone, but adults couldn't, and they were nearly peeing their pants trying to get the thing undone. They wanted all the covers for the water spout on the tub and cabinet locks for all the cabinets. It was about a $30 to $40 cost to outfit that bathroom, when in fact, really all they needed to do was keep the kid out of it. And so the hook and eye that you see there is $1.28. If you can mount that on the wood trim outside and hook it to your door, you got $1.28 solution. The doorknob covers down below that little kids can't operate well, it's $2.09. Rather than putting a whole bunch of stuff all over the bathroom, let's just keep them out of the bathroom. Use a $2.09 doorknob cover. Those come in a variety of sizes and shapes, depending on whether you have the ball handle or you have a lever handle or whatever. The dowels, I told you about that. We have kids who would get out of sliding glass doors. We found that as long as you could put the dowel in the track down by the door, you could keep them out of that. It looked like and matched the trim. As long as the kids didn't see you take that dowel out, they never ever knew that that stick was in the door, because it kind of blended in with the wood track. Very, very inexpensive and easy, a thrifty way to provide some safety around that home. Next slide. These are some of the items that we do have in our office, just to give you an example. On the left, you've got an appliance latch that might be needed if you find kids getting into refrigerators or an oven. On the right are cord blind ties. If you've got cord blinds that are hanging down, obviously they can pose a strangulation hazard. Many cord or blind companies, if you contact the name of the company, they will send you these free of charge. But if not, we can provide them as a way to roll that cord back up and keep it out of kids' reach. Next slide. Here you will see on this slide several types of cabinet locks on the far left. Again, they come in a variety of styles. And so if you send us a list of, and you need cabinet locks, what would be really helpful is if you could snap a picture, ask the client, can I take a picture of your cabinets? Attach that to us so we know what kind of a pipe we're dealing with, or what kind of a drawer, or what kind of a cabinet, because that will help us to decide which of these cabinet locks we need to grab for you to put with your home safety devices. In the middle here, you will see a lot. Nope, go back to that last picture. There you go. You will see lots of ways to take care of electrical hazards, from the socket things that cover up the sockets to that go in as an outlet, to those that cover it all up, to those that are cord extension cord or cord wrap-ups. A lot of different varieties there. The other thing you can do is maybe you can move the couch down a foot further so that those things are covered up and behind the couch, and the kids won't get into them, or a bookshelf or a table or a desk. On the far right, you will see stove knob covers. We have had to give those out on occasion, but as I mentioned to you, most stove knobs will come off. And so if you simply take those off and put them in a drawer or a cupboard next to it, the kids are not able to turn them on without the knob dials, I guess, on them. So that would be an even less expensive option. Next button, or next slide. These are some door attachments, doorknob covers for both the lever and the knob style handles, and then also ones for bifold doors. So again, knowing what kind of a door we're needing to affix is really helpful to have a picture or a description of that. In the middle, you will find a furniture tip over bracket. Those are about $3 to $4. And then you'll also find a TV mounting strap that can get attached to the piece of furniture that television is sitting on. And all televisions come with holes in them that allow that strap to be hooked to and screwed into on that television. And then on the far right are going to be your carbon monoxide and your smoke alarms. But again, if you are in a rental unit, those are oftentimes things that will be provided by the apartment complex. Next slide. You'll see the gun locks that Deputy Lance talked about. We have those at our office, or you can get them down at the Grand Forks Sheriff's Office. The bottom left is a picture of a window guard. Sarah talked about falls from windows. And if you have windows that open too far, you don't want it to open up any more than about 3.5 to 4 inches. And these are a piece of a plexiglass that it articulates kind of at the hinge. You stick it onto the window 4 inches away, and then the window will open a certain distance, but it will stop once it hits that plexiglass, so it can't be opened further. I will say in North Dakota, as we look at our ER visits, we have seen an increase in the number of children that are falling off of balconies and from windows where the parents are relying on that screen to hold children in. And what we say is screens are meant to keep bugs out, not kids in. So making sure that that window does not open any more than that 3.5 to 4 inches can be done with that little device that you see down below. The dowels come in handy for sliding doors, and the anti-slip mats for a tub or a shower where slipping may be an issue. Next slide. So items we don't provide. We told you we don't do fire extinguishers because we say to kids, we don't want you to fight in the fire. We want you just to get out, and that needs to be the message. Corner bumpers, we don't supply those because we found that pool noodles work just as well. The toilet seat covers, like I said, we do not provide those because we found that they're kind of a pain in the, I shouldn't say pain in the tush, but when I'm talking about a toilet seat cover, but they were. They're very hard to work. They don't work all that well. They're expensive, and we found that they were not very effective. And window ladders, I would say we don't provide them on the routine. If you have a situation where you have a second floor, there is not an alternative way out, They are very expensive. Talk to me, and we may consider that on a case-by-case basis. Next slide. This is an image of a product. It's called a safety cap. And this actually was designed by a father who is a paramedic. One day he was vacuuming his house. He had the standard outlet covers on the outlets, and he took it out, set it on the coffee table to plug the vacuum in. And his young toddler got that device, got it in the mouth, and started to swallow it. And what happened, as you know, when you are choking, and you're gasping for air, it was sucking that device further and further and further down into the child's trachea. And as they're gasping, they were creating a suction on that, which lodged that into the child's throat. The father tried to do the Heimlich and found that until the child basically went unresponsive, which caused the body to become limp and the trachea to become limp, that's the point at which he was able to dislodge that device from the child. He said, all right, we got to have a better solution. And so he designed these safety caps. If you look at the top image, you will see the circle. Tina, if you want to circle that, that's a standard outlet cover. They're very small and they don't have a hole in them. The back part of that is what the safety caps look like. They have the same outlet covers that you put into the outlet socket, but it is shaped wider, so it's not as likely to go down into the trachea. And it also has these holes that you can see on either side, similar to a pacifier. Those are designed with holes in them, not simply to hold the pacifier by the pacifier holders, but it's there so that if that were to get inhaled down the mouth, that there would still be an air hole to provide an exchange of air with a child that may be choking on those. We buy these in bulk and we have them available. You'll see down on the bottom, they're $2 for a pack of 12 outlet covers. So that would cover 6 outlets because there's 2 sockets per outlet. If you would like to get these to stock at your public health agency or whatever, you can purchase them from us. We can invoice you $2 for a packet of 12 of them. We buy like thousands of them at a time, and so we get them for very inexpensive. I think they're like 10 cents per item or 11 or 12 cents per item. And so we would sell them to you at what that cost is if you wanted to stock them or use them at your agency. Next slide. I want to make you aware of some other places where you may be able to get some special requests for funding. The North Dakota Association for Disabled, or for the disabled, will a lot of times, if you have children with special needs or disabilities, those children that might have be on the autism spectrum, occasionally on a case-by-case basis, will provide some funding for things such as alarms or tracking devices or fencing. So you might want to check with them if you are working with a client where something like that might be helpful. Next slide. The United Way, our partners at the United Way here in Grand Forks are nothing short of amazing and outstanding. And I want you to go to the next slide, Tina, where it showcases a couple of resources that they offer. The United Way of Grand Forks used to be simply a pass-through organization where they would bring in money and they would send it out to other agencies to do their great work. The United Way in Grand Forks is now doing a lot more direct services for clients. So these are some of the services that they provide in which they may be able to help. The Families First program is one in which they provide rental assistance, utility assistance, essential household items, diapers, cleaning products, personal hygiene products, clothing, that kind of stuff. And they also do case management. If they had a client they were working with that needed home safety supplies, you could reach out to them. They may refer you to us, and then we're able to direct bill the United Way for some of those items. Their kids closet is where they will provide winter apparel, school supplies, hygiene products, and clothing. Car seats. They have a program in which clients that cannot afford a car seat, if they are not on a statewide service, they can reach out and we will screen them. And if they do not meet any of the state programs such as TANF or through their insurance through Minnesota, for example, we will help them with providing them with a car seat. And then one of their other programs is called Wheels for Work. And this is where they will help with minor car repairs. They will maybe provide bus passes for somebody that needs a ride to get to and from work, or gas cards if somebody is in need of fuel assistance. So that is another great source of help. Tina, go to the next slide. Cribs for Kids. This is a statewide program that we talked about already earlier today. We did put the link for that in the chat box, but this is a state-run program in which they will provide people with the pack and play, the sleep sacks, and the pacifiers. So you can go to that statewide website and find out the information of where would be the closest distribution program to you. Next slide. When we send out the PowerPoint slides from today's training and a copy of the home safety assessment, we will also provide you with the Safe Kids resource catalog. This is not something that we post on our website because it's not for the general public, but it is for home visitors or teachers or Cub Scout leaders or home health nurse or people like that that are doing work within the community. And in this resource guide, it has pictures of banners that we might have, stand-up banners, or activity kits that might teach water safety or ATV safety or poison safety. It has examples of our teaching aids, of our trifold displays. If you would like to host a tabletop display, we've got, it's like a briefcase thing we can send to you with a trifold display that you could have up, you know, to celebrate Poison Prevention Month or ATV safety. And those things are all showcased in that catalog. So again, we will send you the PowerPoint, we will send you the home assessment sheet, and we will send you the catalog that you can get information about what other resources we might have. Next slide. This is a slide that shows other items that we have available for sale in our office. We do sell bike helmets, winter sports helmet, elbow knee pads, life jackets, TV straps, car seats, all of those items for sale. We do not sell them for anything over the cost that we pay for them. Many times they're very, very reduced from what you would find in the store. And so if you have clients that might need a bike helmet or a life jacket, we do have loaner programs for our life jackets out and about in the region. If you had a need for a life jacket, give our office a call or email us and say that. We can either put you in touch with that loaner program, or we can find a way where they could purchase one from us at a reduced price. We do payment plans with clients. So if they need to buy a $20 life jacket, can't pay all $20 now, we'll take $5 a month until it's paid off or something like that. This sheet we will also send out with our list of resources and materials for you. Next slide. These are some great resources we have. This Parent's Guide to Safety is a great one. You can find that on our webpage. This home safety checklist you can also download from our page. That is one that is put together by the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Service. It is a room-by-room checklist that would be great to use when you're doing your home safety inspections also, and to have as a leave behind. You can order these in bulk off of the Department of Health and Human Service website, or you can get them from us as well. This family safety activity book, this is geared as a guide for parents to kind of have that conversation with kids about home safety activities. You can download it from our webpage, but we also have hard copies of it in our office, and you can get to use to have that conversation with kids about safety in the home. Next slide. This is a book that we have written and created. It's called Safe at Home Alone. We talked about it this morning. It has kind of a step-by-step guide that we go through at our Safe at Home Alone classes and our babysitting classes. It is designed for that kind of preteen or teenage kids. And then in the middle, there's a parent pullout section. In that parent pullout section is a list. In the state of North Dakota, there is not a law that says you can't leave your child alone at this age or this age or this age. That being said, there are guidelines that are published by the state that say this is what is recommended for who can stay alone for 2 hours of time, or into the evening, or overnight, or in the care of other siblings or kids. And that guideline is something that is used to help parents make good decisions, knowing that there might be a 12-year-old girl that's more mature than a 14-year-old boy, right? I'm not picking on boys, I'm just being honest. So use that as a guide. You can find both the activity guide and the parent pullout section that has those state law or those state recommendations on our webpage and under our safety resources under the home safety section. Next slide. I want to just bring up that we oftentimes get asked, what do I do with car seats that need to be disposed of? We do not want them put in a dumpster or out on the berm, because unfortunately we see way too many families who get them, they try to sell them, they try to use them. We have no idea if they've been in a crash, if they've been recalled, if they're expired. And so we do collect them at our office, and we do take them in for recycling. So if anybody has a car seat in their home that they need to get rid of, have them either bring it to our office, or you bring it to our office. Or if you know that they won't do that, and you want to guide them in what to do, we would really encourage you to have them cut the straps, tear off the fabric, destroy that seat in as many ways as they can prior to putting it in a dumpster, so that somebody does not take it out and try to use it. This sheet shows our Bringing Home Baby class that we offer and our car seat checkup events. If any of you are interested in watching our Bringing Home Baby class, this is held in person. But that being said, we do have a video recording of it that we could send to anybody. So you could put that on your resource list. If you would like to look at doing something like that in your community, if you are a car seat technician, we have shared our curriculum with the state. I know they have shared it with other communities. We are happy to share it with other technicians and help you get a Bringing Home Baby, or I know Fargo calls it Baby's First Ride, class up and going. Put that on your list to reach out to us, and we'll reach back out to you and get in touch with you about how we might be able to help you with doing a class like that in your community. Next slide. Tina, I am going to let you talk about the next couple slides, just because I've been talking a lot, and I know you'll bring these two home, so go for it.
Of course. So one of my many favorite things that we do here at Safe Kids is our parenting education series. This started out as a resource for foster parents to give them an opportunity to get some of their continuing ed education credits while in the comfort of their own home, and without having to get a babysitter. Oftentimes, when we have evening classes and things, it's really, really hard for parents of young children to participate, just because it's hard to get a babysitter. So we cover a different topic each month. Some of the topics, as was noted earlier, seem repetitive because we do cover things in different ways each and every year. We're always going to cover child passenger safety. Carma said it best. I feel like each and every one of us in this office could probably do a 3-hour presentation every single week on a different car seat topic and not cover everything. So that's just it's one of our favorites. But we have also in the past year really integrated some topics that are geared toward parenting older children. So it's not just toddler and infant topics. We also cover school age kid stuff. We even cover some information. Our safety on wheels, for example, in April, we're going to cover helmets, bike safety, scooters, electronic scooters, ATVs, things like that, things that are more interesting to older kiddos. So strongly recommend that you sign up. We've got a QR code there that you can sign up for that. Our Smart Sitter and Safe at Home Alone.
And Tina, one thing, if you can help us by promoting that, you can get a link to those flyers off of our webpage or put that on your resource list of what you'd like and we'll email it to you. Please get it out and share. By virtue of the fact that these are virtual, anybody in North Dakota, Minnesota, anywhere in the country can participate. And we just need them to register. But your help in sharing it would be really, really helpful to us to get the word out about it. Because if I've got somebody presenting in the month of December, we've got a friend of mine from the National Fire Protection Association who is going to present on say decorating and fire safety and that kind of thing. If they're going to be presenting, I'd rather have them present for 100 than 10, right? So your help in promoting these would be really, really helpful to us.
Absolutely. This is some of our upcoming dates for our Smart Sitter and our Safe at Home Alone classes for 2024. But you guys definitely go onto our Facebook. Our Facebook is super robust. It is constantly being updated, and all of our classes, all of our events go on our Facebook events. So go in there. Please direct your clients to go there as well. Because we cover such a vast area of North Dakota and Minnesota, and because there's only 4 of us in the office, unfortunately, we're not always in the office and available. So if you've got a client that would like resources or information from us, we don't encourage people to just drop by the office because the likelihood of there not being somebody available and for them to be disappointed or waste a trip is very great. So please have them reach out to us by phone. Our phone number is right there. Or even Facebook Messenger, email, whatever way they feel comfortable messaging us, and have them set up an appointment. It's a lot better way to have that help. We are in East Grand Forks in the East Grand Forks All True Clinic, and our position in the building is we're in the lower level, we're in the basement. The building is just open the clinic hours. Actually, I think I meant to update this, but the clinic closes at 5 p.m. So if it's after clinic hours, the doors won't be open. If we are expecting you, then we'll make an effort to be watching for you, or you can give us a call if you know that we're still here. But that's definitely something to keep in mind. And Carma mentioned before our newsletter. Please sign up for our newsletter. My coworker Amy does amazing work in making sure that this beautiful newsletter gets put out regularly. So it's a wonderful resource, and I hope that you will sign up to receive it. I put the link in the chat earlier, but it's also there on the screen. And we've been throwing our email and our website to you all day long, but both readily available. The email's being monitored all the time, and our website is just a wealth of information. So please check it out. But also there's safekids.org, which is the national site for Safe Kids Worldwide. So feel free to check out the materials that they have available and the different opportunities as well. If you do want to join the coalition or join a subcommittee, This is the information with regard to the coalition, those dates. If you do want a copy of that flyer, please put that on your resource list and we'll send you that. And then if you're interested in any of those specific subcommittees, email Carma or I and let us know, and we will get you the schedule for those subcommittees as well.
Or if you want to connect with the coalition coordinators that are closer to you, I know we've got somebody on here from Dickinson. You're welcome to join ours by all means. But that being said, you may also want to connect with the one in Bismarck, Mandan, or Minot, and you can find the names of those coordinators on that contact us link on our website, which is up at the top. I believe it's red.
Yes. We used all of our time and then a little bit. So I do want to invite you, please, to complete this evaluation. We do this training. We try to do it every other year, and we are always looking for opportunities to improve it. So we look at every single evaluation that comes in. So feel free to be very honest and let us know what we can add and your thoughts, because it's extremely helpful to us. So I will pop that into the chat. Oh, Carma did. She's really good at that.
Yep.
These are our contact information. That's safekids@alltrue.org. That gets to Carma and she forwards it on to whomever it's pertinent to. But that's my direct email and my direct desk line. And then next to it is Carma's. So if you want to contact either of us, feel free to do so. Like I said, there's 2 other very amazing people that work here in our office. So you might get one of any of the 4 of us, and we're all car seat technicians. We're all cross-trained in a lot of these topics. So you'll get wonderful information no matter which one of us you get.
And I also, before we end today, want to just give a huge shout out to Tina for all her coordination of this event and getting the communication to you ahead of time. I know that she's going to have a big task ahead of her because she's not in the office tomorrow. I am, but I'm leaving and I'm going to be on vacation next week. And I know I promised that you would get a contact from one of the 2 of us. So please be patient with her as she works her way through. You can either email or fax or scan or take a picture of or whatever that list. Please, again, be patient with Tina as she works to try to get you connected with the right people or the right resources or that kind of a thing. And then I want to give a huge shout out to Lance and to Sarah. They provided great, valuable information to us today. And Sarah has been.
And Vanessa.
Yep, and Vanessa. Yep, she's just not on the call right now. But Sarah provided us. She's been a member of our subcommittee, our home safety subcommittee, and she's just a really good expert. So if we run into something that stumps us, Sarah's oftentimes one of our first calls. So thank you, Sarah, for presenting Vanessa. And I know Lance and Vanessa are off the call now, but thank you. And with that, does anybody have any questions or any feedback or anything that we can answer for you right now before we end this session? The other thing before you jump off, March 27th, mark that date down, day-long training on SIDS, farm safety, bike and pedestrian, water, ATV. More information will be coming out about it here in the middle of December with a save the date, but please watch for that. And it'll be a lot of different topics than what were covered today, and also showing you ways in which you could implement some safety strategies around those topics. So look forward to seeing you at that training as well. Thank you, everybody, so much. We appreciated having you here.
Thanks, everybody.